Hello, viewers, and welcome to this off-the-cuff hangout. Unfortunately, I made a mistake with the live event thing. I've never done that before. Someone pointed out how to do it properly, so hopefully next time won't have the problem. So I contacted Arcane a couple of hours ago to say, let's have a chat, because you know what it's like on Google on Google Plus. You often have conversations. Excuse me, that's me talking to myself. Let's turn that off. So, just so I can keep an eye on the comments. Anyway, so yeah, the problem you get with G Plus is that you often talk at people rather than to people. So I thought this would be a nice opportunity for us to have a chat. So, how you doing?
I'm great, man. Just ate some spaghetti, feeling good, stuffed. How about you?
Fine, fine. I've just been watching things, and I was going to have a shower, but I never got around to it. I'll probably do it after this. So, the other day you tagged me in a conversation, and the people were talking about evolution, and you called me an evolutard. I think you were probably aiming at other people rather than me, and you just tagged me in because you thought I was along the same lines. I'm not like that. I'm a layman. I don't know much about evolution. It's shall we say, something beyond my pay grade. So I'm just curious as to why you think I am.
Well, I've seen you around with the Alex Botten crew, as I like to call them. They all seem to be evolutionists. And I guess I assumed that you were too. And I think I was in a conversation with your friend Matt Hunt, and he's an evolutionist, and he was arguing vehemently for evolution. So I guess, I kind of jumped the gun and just included you into that group of people. If I did so unwarrantedly, I apologize, but I just assumed that you were an evolutionist.
Well, I mean, I'm not. I think it's difficult to use the word believe because, of course, in the circles that we run in, the word believe has connotations. It has almost a current of, sort of like it's a belief system. And I don't think of evolution as a belief system. I certainly, don't use it for any form of atheism that I hold. Whether evolution was true or not, it has little relevance to my atheism.
Well, do you believe that evolution is true?
You say there's the word true, isn't it? I think it probably is the case, but I'm not informed enough to sort of argue against it. So rather, I'll just go with the consensus. It's almost like it's almost like the law. You can have an opinion about whether a law is correct or not. But really, it's not something that you can sort of say this should be the case, unless you've got an idea of what the positive and negative qualifications are for it, or quantities for it.
Yeah, I got you. It just seems like a lot of people that I run into on the Google community that are atheists assume the position that evolution is scientific fact, and I oppose that. Of course, I think there's nothing scientific about it. I think that it is a belief system, although the way it is propagated by a lot of people as if it's a scientific consensus, that seems to come across to people as if it is a fact, but Of course, I believe it's not a fact. I think it's the biggest hoax in human history.
I think the difficulty is that, you've said the word fact, and it depends on what form you're taking when it comes to fact. Because, if you say science is a series of facts, and evolution is the theory, or whatever whatever form of science we're talking about. You could be talking about cosmology, you could be talking about biology, you could be talking about chemistry. So there are a whole bunch of facts that it's almost kind of like it's almost like books. You know, it's a whole series of books that hold the whole thing together. You know, I don't think that was a very good analogy. Let's try again. That a theory is based upon all the facts. So, in other words, you have the theory is the conclusion based upon the facts. That's better.
Yeah, so I would say that the creation theory is based upon the facts too, but it seems like a lot in these discussions, people don't want to acknowledge the facts that point to creation. Instead, they just want to focus on the little facts that could be interpreted in light of evolution. And I think it kind of stifles the discussion in a lot of ways. It's disingenuous to say that, oh, we're going to exclude all of the facts that the creationists have that support their position and just say it's just a fringe theory based on a book, and we're just going to accept all the facts that point to evolution and not critically examine the opposition to the theory of evolution. So it just seems like it's very one-sided, and I just like to bring an opposing voice to the creationist side to say, hey, we do have facts, despite what some of these hardened evolutionists like to say.
That's an interesting question, because you say the facts of creation. You know, what are the, you know, again, you know, creationism is a theory, but it needs to be supported by facts. What do you think creationism has? What facts do you think creationism has to base a theory on?
Ironically, a lot of the same facts that are used to base the evolution theory on. We have fossils, we have DNA, we have the Bible, and a lot of other things that in our human experience would indicate that this place was created rather than evolved without a mind behind it. So and it's my position that it's how you look at the facts, your interpretation of the facts, which determines your worldview. So if you look at the facts, let's say of fossils, fossils are a fact, right? They're here. We can look at them. To me, when I look at fossils, I see a flood. When an evolutionist sees fossils, he sees billions of years of progression. So it just depends on the set of glasses that you wear, the interpretation you put on the fact, that determine how you view them.
But how? You see, I would have problem using the Bible as a fact. I mean, that was one of the things you brought up. I would have difficulty using that because that's a book written by man.
Well, that's your presupposition. I don't hold that presupposition.
No, history has, you know, has demonstrated that, you know, these things have been written down, you know, by human beings. I mean, even if you look at the Bible, it says that, you know, that these things have been written down by man. They weren't written down by God.
Well, I think that God used humans to write the Bible in the same way that a human would use a pen to write down a message. So the Bible is inspired by God, though written by humans. So I consider it the Word of God, whereas a professed atheist holds the presupposition that it's just the words of men. It's just two different presuppositions that we hold.
See, I would counter that, because I don't have a presupposition about there not being a God. You know, I have come to that conclusion based upon, you know, it's reading the Bible, looking up at the stars, you know, information that's out there effectively, you know. The fact you've got so many contradictory gods or, you know, belief systems, you know, how do you know which is which? I don't see any point in, you know, accepting something without evidence of that being true. Effectively, I'm not going to base a belief on a shaky foundation.
Well, I would ask you, where's your evidence that God did not use humans to write the Bible, since you hold that humans wrote the Bible and not God?
I think it's a simple case of, you know, that when we do this all the time. If we don't actually know something, we kind of make something up. You know, there was a guy who got shot near me, and supposedly he knew somebody who knew somebody, and that was why he got shot. Now, how do you know whether he did know that person at all? It's almost like a rumor. So I think it's as simple as that I don't know, a bunch of guys were around a campfire, thousands of years ago, before, like early humans, and that they're smart enough to now comprehend the world around them. They're not just hunter-gatherers, maybe they are, and they just sort of think, well, and they're pondering on, they look up at the stars and say, well, what are those? Where did they come from? What makes the trees, grow? What makes the buffalo roam? All those sorts of things. And I think that these guys are around a fire, and one of them says, well, I made this spear. Maybe something made us. Or, and someone gets a piece, some mud, and they forms it into a shape of a person and say, well, I made this. Maybe something made us. And I think it just spread from there. I think it's a very simple idea that people just made up things because they didn't know the answers.
Yeah, well, that's not evidence. That's just your arbitrary assertions that based on what you believe about the past and who you think that those people are, or those people were in the past and their level of understanding. That in no way gives me evidence that shows that those people were not inspired directly by God to write those words. You see what I'm saying? So you actually hold a belief that the Bible is not inspired by God based on just your own arbitrary opinion.
It's not so much that. It's more, having read the Bible, it doesn't make any sense to what we know. I mean, if you read Genesis, Genesis 1 to 20, you've effectively got, the earth, and there's which has a dome over the top of it, the firmament of the heavens, and that the sun and the stars are fixed to it, and also, the sun and the moon are fixed to it, and the stars also, and then so you've got and then later on you got the birds that fly in the firmaments of heaven. Well, that sounds to me like the birds fly at the same altitude of the sun, something we know is 92 million miles away from us, and birds don't fly that way.
Well, that's your interpretation of it, but there are three heavens mentioned. There's the firmament where the birds fly. There's the firmament above that, which is where the sun, moon, and stars are, and then there's the heaven where God is. So I think a critical examination of the Bible, at least from my experience, it explains perfectly what we know. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. There goes space, time, and matter right there. It explains the coming into existence, the Big Bang, if you will, of the universe. In the beginning, there goes time, God created the heavens and the earth. And then he goes on to explain what he made and his purpose for it. And I don't see any contradiction there with what we know scientifically. Now, there might be different interpretations, of course, but again, that goes back to your perception, or the glasses that you're wearing when you look at this evidence and how you look at the Bible. So when people like you tell me, well, it makes no sense to me, well, of course it doesn't make sense to you. It didn't make sense to me either at first, but the more I read it and the more I looked at science and was inspired by the Holy Spirit, it made perfect sense to me.
Now, I find that difficult. What is the Holy Spirit from your point of view?
Well, it's a part of God. It's the way God interacts with us.
Okay, I mean, that doesn't really answer anything. Do you want to just expand on that a bit more?
Well, that would be like me asking you, I mean, who are you? I mean, are you just a bag of chemicals, or is there something else that transcendent that I'm talking to right now, who you refer to as Cliffjumper?
Uh, I think I'm a human being with certain faculties, that have grown out of evolution, throughout the millennia. Um, and I'm smart enough to understand my surroundings and who I am, which separates me from, birds and, other creatures. There are primates that show levels of sentience. But what makes... I don't think there's a grand purpose. I think that's the primary thing. I don't think that I'm special in the universe. I don't think there's anything watching over me. I think I'm just another animal like all those other creatures out there. The only thing that separates me is I'm smarter than they are.
Well, what makes you smarter than them?
The fact that I can, appreciate. I don't know. It's an interesting question, actually. I think really it's the sentience part, isn't it? The consciousness.
Well, my dog is conscious.
Yes, but how conscious is it? Is it conscious of poetry, or is it just conscious of like where's the next food? Where's the next meal coming from?
So are you saying that you have a greater number of neurons in your brain firing? You have extra chemicals up there that makes you gives you this illusion of being more sentient?
When you say illusion, is it an illusion?
Well, I would say from a materialistic standpoint, if you hold to materialism, it definitely is an illusion.
I don't see it as an illusion. I mean, surely that would be something you can measure.
So you can measure consciousness?
No, you can measure the the neurotransmitters and receivers firing.
Right. So you're saying that you have a greater number of those, which makes you gives you a heightened sense of awareness, more so than my dog, right?
Yeah, I mean, humans plan much better. They construct contingencies.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah. When you're asking me about the Holy Spirit, to me, the Holy Spirit is a person, a personal spirit. I believe that we are human beings. We're actually spiritual beings having a human experience in this 3D reality. So it's kind of hard, just like when you say, well, who are you? What are you going to do, throw body parts at me? If I say, Cliffjumper, show me who you are, what are you going to do, take your clothes off, spit on me? I mean, you're more than just your physical makeup, in my opinion. Now, if you hold that you are just your physical makeup, who the hell are you? I mean,
I think that's
really.
I mean, I'm the sum of my experiences, the education I have, the the education and and teachings that my parents handed down. It may be things that I've read in books. So and I think I suppose there's a special something that separates me from somebody else that is inherent in those things. It's the domino effect. All those things that I've learned has made me the person that I am now. I am the last domino on that chain, and there's more dominoes to continue as I learn more and progress throughout my life.
So you are a materialist then? You believe that all that exists is matter and energy?
I would say so. I mean, I've never come. I can't see any minds outside of a material universe.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that seems to be the normal response that I get. Well, we can't see anything else, so as far as I know, that's all there is. So
Well,
it seems pretty reasonable.
Bear in mind, though, when you say see, we can detect more. I mean, for example, we can't see in the infrared, but we can create machinery that can.
Right. Well, we can't see information either, but information definitely exists. Do you agree?
Yeah, but it depends on what you consider information. Because really, isn't information just transferring knowledge from one thing to one person to another? Or reading something and creating information to describe it.
Yeah, information though is intangible. It is abstract. And it also requires a sender and a receiver for it to be information. But if you cracked my skull open right now, you wouldn't find a piece of tape running with letters printed on it, which what we identify as information. So it's abstract. But
Now,
we're exchanging information right now. I'm telling you about me and my knowledge, and you're telling me about you and your knowledge. So in a sense there is an immaterial reality that we both share, but it seems like from a materialistic standpoint, you can't reconcile that.
well, you said that information only happens if there's a sender and a receiver. That's not necessarily true. I mean, uh,
Well, for
I'm
communication of it, yeah.
yeah, I'm going to use an example, which is if a wood falls in a tree. Sorry, if a tree falls in a wood and there's no one around, does it make a sound? You know, then well, the information was coming out in the sound waves, but just because there was no one there to receive it with their ears, does that mean that it wasn't sent out?
Well, that wouldn't be considered information in the sense that we're talking about information. When we're talking about information, we're talking about an exchange of ideas, a message. What a tree falling in the woods would give you random data. It would give you vibrations from the bark hitting the ground, the sound waves, if you will. But that isn't what I'm talking about as far as the exchange of knowledge. A tree doesn't have knowledge. A tree falling over will just give you random data about the surroundings. It won't give you an abstract idea communicated from one sentient mind to another.
Um, but I think a tree would give data. I mean, you could tell by the pressure whether it was a big tree or a small tree. That's not necessarily random.
Well, in order for data to be considered meaningful information, it would have to be processed, and it takes a mind to do that. For example, if the tree fell, it would give you data, how large the tree is, the angle at which it fell, the sound waves, etc., etc. And then your mind would process that, turn it into information which then could be shared with another person or another intelligence. So there's a difference there between the data and the processing of the data into information, which we recognize as a message or knowledge for that matter.
But you've added an element that may not exist. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that Earth is a planet with only trees and foliage. So there are no animals, no humans, no fish. The only thing that's on this planet is trees. Or you could use another planet. Okay. Now, if a tree falls, and it's a big tree or a small tree, the information of whether it was a big small tree is still present, whether or not there are things to hear it or sense whether it was a big or a small tree or anything. The information is still there. It's just not being it's not being processed by anything, but the information is there.
Well, I would say the data would be there, but the data only becomes information once it is processed by an intelligent receiver of the data. For example, our alphabet, 26 characters.
Mm-hmm.
If you laid out the alphabet from A to Z, just wrote it down on a piece of paper, that would not be meaningful information. It would be data. But you take that alphabet and you arrange it into specific sequences which give an overall meaning. Let's say I took that alphabet and I said, Cliffjumper is a handsome guy who lives somewhere in England. I assume you live in England.
Yeah.
That then would be taking the data of the alphabet and arranging it into specific information, a message. So that's the difference between data, just random characters or random phenomenon, and the processing of that into a message, which we can exchange and retain knowledge from it. You see the difference?
I think so. I still think the processing is really the key to it, isn't it? I'm going to change subjects a little bit. So one of the things we talked about in G-Man's Hangout, we talked about the presup stuff a bit, but before you talked about that, I only came in halfway through the Hangout, so I didn't see the first part. And there was something you said in that first part that I kind of been wanting to talk to you about. And it was, you said that Lawrence Krauss was playing semantics with the word nothing. And if you watch the Magic Sandwich Show, I kind of introduced what you were talking about, into that at the start. Did you see it?
I vaguely remember that conversation, yeah.
Yeah, what I was saying, and I used this class as an example, and when Krauss was talking about that, he was effectively saying what is nothing, and there are variations in nothing. So I used, in the Magic Sandwich Show, I used this glass as an example. What is in this glass? It's a glass. It's an empty glass. In fact, there's actually a couple of dribbles of water in it. So there is nothing in that glass. If we were just to, say what's in the glass, we'd say nothing. But there is something in it. It's got air. It's got argon. It's got hydrogen in there. It's got all sorts of things in there. It's got dimensions. It has size. And in fact, because it's a pint glass, it has a fixed size because someone decided it was going to be able to fit a pint of water in there or any other liquid. It's got gravity in there, so it's got all sorts of things in there. It's even got imperfections in it, I'm sure, if you looked at it under a microscope. So it is a nothing with substance. Would you disagree with that?
No.
So, and really, I think that's where, I don't think he was playing semantics with it. I think there's a difference in ideas of nothing, and that when I hear creationists talk about the Big Bang from nothing, I don't think they quite understand what nothing is, and that's an example of nothing. You've got a philosophical nothing, which is nothing of any kind, but does that actually exist? What do you think?
No. I don't even think that our human minds can conceive of nothing. But when Lawrence Krauss says a universe from nothing, when you say nothing, that implies no space, no matter, no energy, no thing. That means without a thing. Space is a thing. It's a vacuum. Matter and energy are a thing. So when you say no thing, a universe from no thing, that seems to be a universe from nothing, from no thing. So, but he doesn't really mean nothing. He actually means a universe from something, from a vacuum. So it's very deceptive in that way, because we know that the universe began to exist at a finite point in the past. So it seems to me that it's just a very slick way of him trying to push his idea of a universe coming into existence without a cause. So he says, well, a universe from nothing. But to a layman, when a layman hears that, they're like, well, it seems to me like he's saying a universe from nothing. Yeah. But he doesn't really mean nothing, does he?
No, I mean, this is the difficulty. It's like the idea of the word theory. There are two versions of the word theory, effectively. You've got the, I have a guess that, I know tomorrow I might win the lottery. Whether it happens or not is a different story. It would be nice. But, I've got a theory that, I don't know, the cop that's investigating who did the crime has a theory. His theory is based upon, sometimes it's based upon a hunch, but it's based upon evidence, but he effectively says, I think so and so did it, and, he tries to find the evidence to support that. Now, personally, I think that's a bad way to go if you're a cop, but, there's a general theory, a guess. And then there's a scientific theory which is based upon a pile of facts. And so when, in the same way as nothing, there's a philosophical nothing of any kind, which is kind of what you're talking about, the no thing. In cosmology, what the question is being asked is, was there a something before the Big Bang? If the Big Bang existed at all, because there are people that think that the big, scientists, cosmologists, physicists who think that the Big Bang may not have happened at all. Now, I'm not a cosmologist either. Bear in mind, I'm still a layman. I have an interest in these things, but whether they're accurate or not, I don't. I don't have the maths to make that kind of assertion myself. I can only go with things that I've heard and things that I find interesting. So there are a couple of ideas of how the Big Bang started, if it started, of course, at all. And again, it's this nothing. What was in the space? And bear in mind, when I say space, that's that even that doesn't work, because we're going to have to think of certain words in an arbitrary sense rather than a specific one, because if we think specific all the time, we're going to get jammed up. If you get my meaning here?
Yeah, well, I think some of these things need to be talked about specifically, otherwise we're going to be confused. And I think that the people who follow Lawrence Krauss, who are laymen, when they hear him speak like that and use that language, don't you see the impression that it could give off, as if science has figured out that the universe can come from nothing, right?
But there's the problem again. It's the same thing. What is nothing? I mean, let me give you 3 examples of nothing. Now, I already told you one, which is absolute zero, nothing of any kind, no matter, no space, no energy, no galaxies, nothing, no time for that matter. There's another one which is there's a NASA facility. It's in Iowa, Ohio. I always forget. I need to check up one of these days. And it's a big dome, and they use it for testing satellites and things like that. So the Mars rover, where they covered it in airbags and they bounced it on the surface of the moon, and then Mars, and then deflated the bags and drove it off. Same thing. They tested it there. So it's this big room, and they suck out all the air and they freeze out all the atoms. So it is, to all intents and purposes, nothing. But it's got gravity, it's got volume, you can see through it. So it is a nothing with substance. Another one is something I heard Michio Kaku once mention, which is the sort of the stellar vacuum, where there may not be any matter, but there might be energy. And a bit like a soda can, if you shake it up and you pull the top, it basically fizzle over. So some bits of energy fizzle and affect others, and next thing you know, it's Big Bang, maybe. But here's an example of something that's a bit different. So we have this idea: we got the Big Bang, and then we've got the universe, and the universe is expanding. But what's it expanding into? What is, if you imagine here's the universe and here's the boundary of it, what's here? Is that nothing? And what's beyond that nothing? What are the properties of it? Is it a nothing with substance, or is it a nothing?
Well, again, everything that you just mentioned are properties of something. You didn't describe nothing, and that's my point. I don't even think the human mind can even perceive or even conceptualize, understand the concept of nothing. of there being no thing. Now, before the Big Bang, which I don't believe in a Big Bang, I believe that God spoke everything into existence and then expanded it from there,
Okay.
very purposefully and gracefully. I don't think that there was any random bang or expansion about it. But before the Big Bang, there was something, because God is something. Now, God isn't something physical. He is something abstract. He is immaterial. In the same way that your thoughts are, in the same way that information is, in the same way that our cognitive faculties are. But us, from a human experience, we have to filter these things through our physical means. So trying to describe nothing, man, just seems very silly to me. It seems retarded. Like you just can't describe nothing. Because if you can't describe nothing by using something. So if you
Well,
say, well, nothing is this, well,
okay.
that is this is actually something. So it's really stupid, in my opinion. But
Okay. So, I'm not going to use. I don't like to use the word worldview, but you know, my my way of thinking is I use the null hypothesis. Effectively, I don't believe something until I have evidence to believe something is true, or is the case, rather. So, something noisy outside. So we know that there are, you know, that there are regions of space that don't have much in them. And when I say much, they are effectively the black bits between the stars that are nothing, but they're nothing with substance. That is, the expansion of the galaxy.
see,
Sorry.
again, though, nothing with substance. You see what I'm saying? That's
It
completely
does have
stupid.
but it does have substance. It's measurable.
Well, a substance is something, right?
Well, yeah, it is something.
Right. So that's equivalent to saying nothing is something.
Right. What I'm saying is, if you take the null hypothesis, why believe that an absolute nothing exists if we've never seen any evidence of it other than an idea?
Well, I don't hold that an absolute nothing does exist. I believe that God exists and that everything else is derivative from Him. So I don't believe in nothing.
So,
There's at
so
all. I
why
don't
would?
think that there is a place anywhere where there is absolutely no thing.
Okay, so if that's the case, why would you suggest that science is suggesting something from nothing?
No, I'm saying that that's what Lawrence Krauss is suggesting, but he's not really suggesting that, as we've explained. I think that science is pointing to the fact that the universe had a beginning and that we can't calculate what was before it. So therefore, if you deny God as the originator, then you're forced to say, well, the universe, everything came from no thing, because there was no time, no space, no energy, no matter, which we consider as things, something. So if all of the things came into existence, um, they're positing that it came from no thing. Well, that no thing is actually God, in my opinion. So it's not really nothing.
Well, it's interesting you said that we can't calculate. In fact, we have calculated a something before the Big Bang. There are physicists in Canada, I believe it is. It's this almost a think tank, and they spend all day doing mathematics. And they came, there were at least three, mathematical theories. In other words, these have been proven. Whether the physics bears out is a different story, but these have been mathematically proven to be the case. Okay, and of course all of them are true as well. They all mathematically work. It's just we don't know whether they are actually the case as opposed to what we think might be the case. So one of them is: have you ever heard of the fine-tuned universe?
Yeah, I believe the universe is fine-tuned.
Yeah. So the idea is, if you think about like a stereo with a graphic equalizer, and you've got the knobs, at certain levels. So you've got one which is a gravitation, one's the electromagnetic force, things like that. So the idea is that they have to be perfectly aligned. If they're out by any tiny bit of a degree, like in any way, the universe wouldn't work. It would fizzle out immediately, or it would expand to a point and then collapse on its own gravity. Now, in that kind of method, one of the suggestions is that, bear in mind, I'm a layman, so I'm trying to explain something, again, beyond my pay grade, as it were. But it's the interpretation I got from something. If you imagine the singularity and the universe expanding, so what happens is at the singularity, this is the point where the macro universe, what we live in, and the subatomic universe is the change. So if you imagine it's like, like it peaks and goes like that. So what happens is so you've got a universe that was there before, and it didn't work, and then it started to go down and down and down and down. And what happened was that in the macro universe, the atoms are attracted to each other, but in the subatomic universe, they're repellent from each other. So what happened was this got smaller and smaller and smaller, and it went subatomic and then got spewed back out. In other words, the big bounce. And who's to say it could have been bouncing forever? Another idea is of a black hole, that matter is being consumed into it, and that effectively it's shoved. The material has to go somewhere, and it gets spewed out into another universe, which creates a big bang in that universe. And of course, who's to say what works in another universe? Time might be backwards in another universe. The electromagnetic force may be completely different in another universe. So there's all sorts of crazy things that can go on there. But that's beyond something I understand. So those things I just explained to you, I know they're hard concepts to grasp. I mean, they're hard enough. I had to watch it a couple of times before I understood it. Are those kinds of things realistic for you?
Not really. I mean, those are all just, in my opinion, just your ideas or beliefs on where the universe came from. Am I wrong?
Well, they're not my beliefs. They're other people's mathematical equations. They have actually figured out the mathematics that this works. This isn't just an idea. This is mathematically proven.
What, that there are other universes?
That this is possible, yeah.
Well, I've never seen any evidence for any other universes. So do all the math you want until you can show me some other universe. It's still just an idea.
So effectively, you just don't like the idea that it. I don't know. It sounds almost to me like you don't like the idea that it could be true, and so you're just going to disregard it. Because it disagrees from a point that you hold. Would that be reason?
Well, there's no reason. There's no real reason to believe it. I believe the Bible, and I have no reason to reject the Bible based on somebody's fantasy idea of multiple universes accidentally creating this one.
Okay. I mean, I can understand that. I mean, it's a difficult concept to understand. Okay, let me ask you a question. How old do you think the universe is? Do you think it is like Bishop Ussher suggested, 6,018 years, and was created in the year 4004 BC? Do you believe that?
I honestly don't know how old I think the universe is, but if I had to guess, based on what I do know, we have no more evidence to suggest it's anything over than 10,000 years.
You see, that's the problem. I mean, I have. That's one of the big clinchers for me. For me, we can see things that are millions of light years away, and that just discounts a universe or a planet for that matter less than 10,000 years. I mean, would you like an example?
Oh, go ahead.
There's the Cigar Nebula, which is a Messier 82. This is 12 million light years away. And on the 21st of January, I think it was, there was a supernova that we noticed. Now, even if it wasn't slowed down by gravitational eddies or some kind of spatial phenomena, it still would have taken 12 million years for the light to get from there to here. So how would you explain that in a universe that's only 10,000 years old?
Well, I would say that the light was here from the beginning when God created everything mature. In order for you to say that that is a proof of an age old, of the universe being that age, of billions of years old, you would actually have to prove that God did not create a mature universe and that we are looking at an apparent age as opposed to an actual age. You see what I mean? So if God created it mature, created the light here on earth, and then expanded the universe, sure, we would see great distances, but distance doesn't equal time. So in all actuality, we could be looking at apparent age. Are you even at least willing to entertain that possibility?
Why, where would you get this apparent age? Where would you get the idea that it's not what it is?
Well, just like I said, if God created the universe mature and he created the light here on earth and then expanded the universe, just like it says in the Bible, then we would be looking at apparent age. We would be looking and saying, okay, these things are billions of years away. If we start with a Big Bang assumption that the universe has been progressing over time, billions of years, then of course you would assume, okay, if it takes billions of years for light to reach this distance, then light is at this distance, then it must be billions of years away. But if you grant the fact that it's possible that God created a mature universe, then surely you would have to see that we're looking at apparent age as opposed to actual age. Just like when God created Adam as a full-grown man, we would look at him today and say he looks 20 years old. He looks like he grew to be 20, when in fact he was just 1 second old and looked 20 years old. You see what I'm saying?
Okay, but why would God create a universe that is billions of light years away in an instant? What would be the purpose in that? I mean, just to give you an example,
Well,
imagine if it was true. Okay, sorry. If I was a god, just to use an example, okay, how cool would it be? Sorry, let's try again. How cool would it be if you're on the planet and every year you see new stars blink into existence? That would be awesome. But we don't see that.
well, God said that he was finished with his creation. So, yeah, I mean,
Then why is it
it depends
expanding?
on, like I said, it depends on your glasses, man. If you have this assumption starting out that the universe took billions of years to form, then of course you're going to look at these distances and say that they equal time. But distance does not equal time, no matter what Fiona Robertson says here in the chat. Distance does not equal time. If distance were to equal time, you would have to prove that God didn't create a mature universe. That's just like saying, you know, when God created Adam as a full-grown man, 1 second after he created Adam, he looked like a full-grown man. We would be looking at apparent age as opposed to actual age. So who's to say that God didn't create the vastness of the universe, and then humans come along and say, wow, it's so big, it must have taken billions of years for the light to reach here, when in fact the light was here all along. So in order for you to prove billions of years, you would have to prove that God did not create a mature universe and that we are looking at actual age as opposed to apparent age. So all of these billions of years theories, as practical as they may seem, they're not facts in any stretch of the word, because you can't disprove the contrary.
We have lots of evidence to prove these things, and to suggest that, you know, what we see now is something that's was already created mature, it sounds to me like you're trying to wedge it in. You know, if you're saying it's 10,000 years old, and you know that the Bible's accurate, then you're trying to squeeze an awful lot of stuff in a very small amount of space, purely on an assertion, to my mind.
No, like I said, it's just a matter of interpretation. I could just easily turn that back around on you and say, why do we only see 300 or so supernova remnants out there? So we see, we should see a lot more if, in fact, the universes are, or the universe is billions of years old, and that stars have been blowing up for billions of years. We should see a lot more supernovas. We should see the spiral. We shouldn't see the perfect spiral arms of the galaxy. If they had been spiraling for billions of years, they would have flown apart by now. The recession of the moon, etc., etc. I can go on for days with facts, observable facts, which suggest a younger age of the universe, but those are excluded from any discussion from the atheist side when discussing these things. So I think that for every age, for every dating method that you can give me showing an old age of the universe, I can give you 10 that show a younger age.
I think that would be. I mean, you know, we'll take Messier 82 just for an example. We can tell because it's got a redshift that is going away, and we can tell how fast it's going away because of the frequency of that light.
Well, I have no problem with that. God is expanding the universe, just like He said in the Bible. And what's interesting is that
a few moments ago,
before we knew that the universe was expanding, the Bible said that it was. And then once we found out that it was expanding, lo and behold, the Bible was correct. So every turn we make in the scientific exploration of this place, it's lining up with the Bible. There's nothing that contradicts it. The only thing that contradicts it is the interpretation from the atheist or the secular side.
I can't see how you get the idea where it says the universe is expanding.
It says clearly in the Bible that God stretches out the heavens. He stretches it out as just like a tent. And when you look at the Big Bang models, how it traverses back to a singular point and then expands, it looks quite like a tent, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't look like a tent. Tents aren't 360-degree. Well, you know, they're not circular in shape. If the universe is expanding in a circular shape at all, you know, obviously the things on the tent don't get further away as you expand it. The balloon.
Well, it looks like when you look at the models that they've drawn up in the computer animation of traversing back, how it's expanding outward and away from the singularity, it does kind of look like a tent. And people can Google image it and see exactly what I'm talking about. And of course, it's not a perfect analogy, but it gives you a sense of how accurate the Bible was when it explained God stretches out the heavens. And that's what we see, a stretching out, an expansion of the universe as predicted in the Bible, which wasn't known till recently in science.
When it says it in the Bible, is this a proverb or is this a literal bit? Because of course I know you're more of a fan of a literalist universe, or literalist Bible.
Well, when it says God stretches out the heavens as if like a tent, and that's exactly what we see in science, I don't see any reason to believe that that is just poetic language there. I think it's metaphorically used, but I think it's used to express a literal phenomenon being acted on, being carried out by God.
Do you think that's because the people of the time weren't able to actually get it accurate? They had to interpret it?
No, I think that God wrote the Bible, man. I don't hold that people wrote it.
Okay, now you see, this is one of the reasons why I find the Bible pretty horrible, because you know you've got this loving God that kills everybody but 7 people, that frees the Jews from slavery, and then you know lets them decide to enslave themselves. You know, later on, that doesn't sound right to me.
I'm sorry, I missed the last part of what you were saying. You broke up there a little bit.
Sorry, what I was saying is that if you look at Exodus, it talks about how you know the slaves revolt and run away from Egypt, and then they decide that they're going to have Exodus 21 in us and enslave each other, which, um, didn't they learn? I mean, if God's against slavery with the Egyptians, why is he for it for enslaving your fellow Hebrews?
Well, good question. That just depends on what you mean by slavery. I don't hold that slavery was the kind of slavery that was propagated in the American South. The slavery within the Bible was more of an indentured servitude for paying off debts and that kind of thing. It was a different system back then. So when people try to put their modern views and what we see in modern times and place it onto the Bible, which was back then, they had a completely different culture and way of living. So it wouldn't be fair to do that. You would have to look at exactly what the Bible says. And the Bible also gives commands to slave owners to treat their slaves well because they also have a master who is in heaven. So, all this nitpicking about all slavery in the Bible and this and that, I really don't like to get into that because it's really a matter of interpretation, how you approach the text. And don't get me wrong, before I was a Christian, I used to think the same things about the Bible. And it wasn't until I actually gave my heart to it that I was able to look at it unbiasedly and see it for what it is. So I don't blame you for looking at it that way. Hey, more power to you. All I could say is open up your heart to God. Maybe he'll let some light in and you'll be able to see it for what it actually is. And
I
God
don't think
is
I
a
could,
loving God. So
but I don't think I could ever accept the idea of a loving God that will let people enslave each other, and to the point that it says that if you pluck out someone's eye or you beat them almost to death but they don't die within a couple of days, they won't be punished, things like that.
See, it's really easy to just nitpick things out that you don't agree with and then paint God as this monster. But what's hard to do is to read the entirety of the text and get the proper meaning behind what was said. And sure, it might sound like it's a cop-out on my part by saying that, but I'm saying that in truth, you read the whole thing, you're not going to come out with God as this murdering bastard. You're going to come out with God as a just God. He's a loving God, and he's merciful. But him being just means that he must punish when is necessary. So what atheists sound like to me is sound like kids who don't like the punishment that they got from mommy and daddy because they did something wrong, and they paint mommy and daddy out to be this crazy monster. Oh, I hate mom. I'm never going to talk to her again. I'm going to pack a toy and move. I'm going to move out. That's what these atheists sound like. I don't hear any really in-depth critical examination of the text. All I hear is nitpicking out of things that seem like a shock value, and then they run with it. So I don't engage in that kind of talk. So like I said, you can believe what you want about it, but when you're serious and you want to sit down and actually go over those finer details, I'd be more than happy to.
I find it interesting that you'll sort of gloss over effectively slavery. Just say, well, you have to look at it in its entirety. How can you look at the idea of you can enslave the heathens around you, no problem at all, they're the spoils of war or whatever, and yet you can take your own fellow Hebrews and enslave them for 6 years, and even then, I mean, I find that a problem, because why 6 years? Why not 7 years? Why not 5 years? Surely some debt will be worth a year or 6 months. Others will be worth 10 years. And then, there's this sort of thing about Exodus 21, how you can take someone who's single and enslave them for life by getting them married, giving them a wife.
Well, again, it depends on how you're defining slavery. The slavery as mentioned in the Bible is not like the slavery in the American South where they were treated like dogs. Well, my ancestors were treated inhumanely in the American South. That's not what it was like back then. So when you say, well, I don't see how God can allow people to be enslaved, imagine if you were working, you had a meager job, you made very few dollars or a little bit of money, and you became indebted to somebody, and you said, hey, I can't pay this debt off, I don't have the money to feed my family or support myself. You would then be a servant more than a slave in those times. So slavery is kind of a loose term, and you have to define what you mean by that. Are you talking about the American South slavery, where they were beaten, whipped, and treated like dogs? Or are you talking about servants who were working to pay off a debt and with the option to be released? And again, it was a completely different time back then. So for atheists and whoever to throw around this word about slavery and then paint God out to be the slave master, as we depict slaves in the American South, is really disingenuous. So I don't even like to get into that too much. And of course, you hold the presupposition that the Bible isn't the Word of God anyway. On top of that, you don't even have a moral foundation by which to oppose slavery as being good or bad. You have no foundation as an atheist, so you're actually borrowing from the Bible to criticize it. Do you realize that?
Well, my argument there would be that my moral foundation is it is wrong to enslave other people, to own other people as property.
Why is that wrong?
Because people are individual people, they're sentient, things like that. To own somebody as property. So, do you think it's right?
No, but I have an objective standard, and why it's not right. As an atheist, why the hell do you say it's not right? After all, you just said earlier that the only difference between you and my dog is the amount of neurons firing in your brain. Do you own a dog? Is it wrong to own dogs?
No, but they're pets. I don't go beating them. You know, I have a moral certitude about that as well.
Well, people own dogs as slaves. They make dogs do whatever they want. They're pets. So if the only difference between you and a dog is the amount of chemicals in your head, I don't see where you can derive a moral ought from chemicals in your head. Just because you think that you're more superior than a dog, that gives you more of a right than a dog within your worldview?
Okay, well, if you like, we can explore that. Now, why is it wrong to steal?
Because God's not a thief, and we're made in His image. We're supposed to represent Him. Why is it wrong to steal in your worldview?
Well, no, you didn't really answer the question. Well, I mean, is it because it says so in the Bible?
No, I did answer the question. I said because God is not a thief. It's contrary to His eternal character. That's why, and we're made in His image.
That didn't really answer the question. Why is it wrong to steal? Why is it wrong to steal?
I just answered it. It might not be sufficient to you, but I'll say it probably in another way. God created us in His image to represent Him on this earth. God is not a thief. He expects us not to be thieves. Therefore, when we steal, we lie about the character of God, which is worthy of punishment. We have a moral ought written into the fabric of our existence, being derivative from the eternal character of God. As an atheist, you evolved from pond scum. Why the hell is it wrong to steal from other pond scum?
Don't you think that's a little horrible, that? Pond scum? That's a little derogatory, don't you think?
Well, hey, if you have an alternative theory of where you came from aside from being created by God, I'm all ears. But all I hear from the atheists is that we evolved via abiogenesis from some kind of primitive soup, pond scum for short.
I think the word scum is a bit off, My reason for not stealing, outside of the fact that it's against the law, which is something that man has decided over time, and there have been changes over what things are property and what things are not, and where you can take things and when you can't. But I've had 3 bicycles stolen from me. Okay, I know how it feels to have something stolen from me. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel pleasant. So if I was to steal something from somebody else, that would not be pleasant for them. I know how it feels, So I empathize with how it would feel for them. So basically, it's wrong to steal because it makes people feel bad. That sounds a reasonable thing to say, don't you think?
Well, that's your opinion, but somebody can hold an opposite opinion and you'd have no objective basis to oppose it. That's the problem with your worldview. There is no objective ought.
Well, it was objective, because I just looked at other people's how they would make another person feel outside of my own feelings. So that is objective, is it not?
No, it's still subjective. That is your subjective opinion that it's wrong to do that. But someone else could say it's my subjective opinion that it's okay to steal to feed my family or to get what I want. And you have no moral ought. You just have a subjective opinion based on your evolution from pond stew.
I see you're trying to squeeze that in there.
Well, I mean, if you got an alternative term for where you came from other than a primordial soup, like I said, I'm all ears.
You know, you believe you evolved from lesser creatures. How does that work?
I don't believe I evolved from lesser creatures. I think that my ancestors were much greater than I am.
No, I said that you believe, meaning me.
Oh, yeah, you do believe that, don't you?
Well, believe is an interesting point of view. Like I say, remember that abiogenesis is a different thing to you know, common descent, which is a different thing to evolution. Although they are kind of linked, they are somewhat different.
Yeah, well, whatever.
So, again, you know, I mean, when I hear you sort of saying using the Bible to justify your you know, your not stealing, that sounds like an argument from authority to me.
What's wrong with that?
Well, let me give you an example. Have you ever heard of the Milgram experiment? It's a psychology experiment.
Refresh my memory.
It's an experiment by a guy called Stanley, I think his name was Milgram, in the 1950s, 60s kind of period. And what happened was I'll go through the experiment with you. So you've got two people. So what happens is, we'll use you and I as an example, okay? So what happens is the two of us met in a waiting room by a guy in a white coat, the guy doing the study. So and it's a psychology test. We've been paid in advance. So what happens is we draw lots, and I draw the lot to be the learner, and you draw the lot to be the teacher. So we get taken into a room, and then there's a little room next to that. And you watch me being strapped into a chair and have electrical probes attached to me. So then and I'm strapped down into this chair. And then you get taken into the first room, and in the room there's, you know, a desk where the guy in the white coat is going to sit, and then there's a table for you to sit at, and in front of you there's a box with a load of switches on, and written above the switches is, you know, sort of, you know, mild shock, you know, severe shock, you know, and it has a long range. There's about 20 buttons on it, and it goes through to XXX, you know, and it's got, like, you know, 480 volts or something like that. You know, it's just a huge amount of voltage. It's going to kill you. You know, we know. I mean, I know that in America you got 110 volts, but we got 240 here. You go and touch that, there's a good chance you're going to die. So, you know, it happens. Anyway, so what happens is, what you've got to do is you've got to read out 4 words, and I have to recite them from in the other room. You can't see me. So what happens is, you know, I get the first few right, but if I get it wrong, you have to zap me with the power, and the voltage goes up and up and up. And what happens is, after a while, you hear me going, "Ow," or something like that. You know, it's becoming unpleasant, and you kind of nervously look in the background and you say, "Is this all right?" And the guy in the white coat, he says, "You know, the experiment demands that you continue." So you go, "Okay." And so the voltage goes up and up. And next thing you know, I'm saying, "Right, I'm not going to do this anymore. I want out. And you sort of look at the guy nervously, and he sort of says, "You know, the experiment demands that you continue." And then, you know, you press the button. And I sort of go, I don't want out. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I'm not going to do it anymore. So and you sort of look nervously at the guy, and the guy says, a non-response is a negative response. The experiment demands that you continue. And so there's no more sound from the other room. You can't hear me at all. And at least 75%, often more, will go all the way to the end, because there's a guy in a white coat saying the experiment demands to continue. They effectively put aside their morality because someone told them to. And it's exactly the same thing. I hate to Paul Godwin's law, but it's kind of what the Nazis did. You had loads of people who put aside their moral certitude to kill people. The Jews, the Gypsies, the gays, etc., etc., they put them to death because they were just following orders. And that is how I see the Bible when it comes to things like that, just following orders, just, argument from authority.
So what's wrong with that in your worldview? I mean, all you've done is say, well, you think it's wrong. Okay, so why should I care? What if I like torturing people? What if I think it brings me pleasure? What if I genuinely believe it's going to enhance and extend my life for me to torture people? Why the hell should I listen to you when you say that it's wrong when I say that it's right?
It's not just me, though, isn't it? It's the people. The consensus is saying these things are wrong. I mean, a simple example for why stealing and killing people and things like that is wrong is because, you can't have a working, society if there's anarchy, if you can't trust whether you're going to, you go out to work and your stuff gets stolen, or whether your boss will pay you, or whether, someone's going to, go out with your girlfriend or wife or kill you. You can't have a conducive, relationship with your neighbors if you don't trust them, and trust is life.
Why should I give a crap about having a conducive relationship other than your opinion?
Because the only way things work is if we work together. Together we thrive, divided we fall.
That's not what the Nazis said. The Nazis said we need to whack and kill everybody who's genetically inferior according to us. So they obviously didn't want to work together with the Jews, did they?
And that's why we got the Nuremberg trials.
Yeah, but that doesn't give an ought to it. It's just your subjective opinion that what they did was wrong.
Do you think
I think that you're smart enough. I honestly think that you're smart enough to understand that. You can't get an ought from an is, right?
Well, that's an interesting thing, because just because something is the case, it doesn't mean to say it ought to be true. I mean, I'll give you an example. Let's take a pure Darwinistic point of view, okay? So if we were going to approach disabled people from a Darwinistic point of view, which is survival of the fittest, we basically say, well, screw you. I don't care if you're disabled, you can't walk. We're not going to invent wheelchairs. We're not going to put disability ramps. We're not going to make it convenient at all. You can just crawl. That would be taking evolution, to its natural course. But we don't do that. As society, sociology-wise, we say, okay, look, we have people in our society that are not able to perform as well as everybody else, so we need to balance the scales. So.
Well, if we were being consistent with the evolutionary paradigm, there's no reason why we shouldn't just kill all the elderly and disabled people, because they're a hindrance on our society. They're costing billions of dollars. They're costing man hours taking care of these people. We're underpaying our CNAs and our nurses to take care of these people. They are a burden on society. We would probably be better off if we just killed them all. So it's ironic that no one lives consistent with that ideology of evolution, yet we want to adopt the ideology of evolution just to get God out of the picture. See, it just illustrates my point that you're borrowing morality from the Bible to argue against it. But, of course, you're not going to admit to that.
That sounds like an assertion to me.
Well, everything you're telling me is nothing but assertions because you have nothing objective to ground it on. You're just giving me your arbitrary opinion about what you think is right or wrong according to you, but you have nothing above, outside, or beyond your opinion to say that that is the case. Now, the Bible, however, if it is in fact the Word of God, then that is a direct word from the authority, from the source of morality itself that says, "Thou shalt not steal." So
Okay,
in
so
my worldview, I have an objective ought and why I should not steal. Your worldview says, well, if it's your opinion, steal if you want to. If you think it's bad, then it's bad. If you think it's good, then it's good. There is no objective ought to it
okay, so
whatsoever.
so if you've got this proper moral foundation, why don't what do you think it's okay to enslave people?
No.
Well, it commands to. It says you can do that in Exodus 21. Why don't you do it?
Well, I'm a Christian. The Christian law is different than the Old Testament laws. You're aware of that, right?
So why use the Old Testament at all then?
Like I said, times were different back then, and the slavery that you're talking about, or I think that you're implying, is not the same as the slavery back then. The slavery back then was more like servanthood for
So
people who were in debt and could not afford to take care of themselves. They would become servants to people who had more means and could provide, and they could work off their debt or whatever. So of course, I'm against slavery, but I just don't understand why you're against slavery. After all, you said that you're no different than my dog, other than a couple of chemicals in your head. You own dogs, you own cats, people own pets, so what's the big deal?
I think we're more than just some chemicals in our head. It's more than that.
Then what is it? What's more, if you evolved with no creator, what more are you than just chemicals?
It's the sentience, isn't it?
What is that?
We have consciousness.
What is that, aside from more chemicals?
It's got to. It's going to be it's going to be a byproduct of evolution. In order to be able to make sense of the world, the universe, we need to be able to be aware of that. And the more you've got, so to speak, the more aware you are.
That's just your ideology. I'm asking you to give me an empirical account of something. You said that you don't think that you're just chemicals, right? So what more are you?
Mm, I think all these things. It's an interesting question. I don't know. I don't know. It's a bit different. It's not something I've had to consider much. You know, I try not to make assertions outside of things that I know. You know, I think that's one of the differences between you and I. I don't make claims without at least a reasonable idea.
Well, I mean, like I said, you know, it just seems obvious. You know, you can't get an ought from an is. If evolution happened, then that just
I
gives you
did,
a bunch of ises, you know.
but
This
I
is the
did do
case.
that.
This is the case. You don't get an ought from that. Just
But
like
I
Richard Dawkins says, you know, this universe is exactly what we'd expect to see if at bottom there was no love, no hate, just no good, no evil, just blind, pitiless indifference. So where do you get morality from that? So everything that you say is bad or good about the Bible, you're borrowing from the foundation of the Bible to do that. So
and
which,
have
in my
you
opinion, exposes the fact that you know that God exists and that you're created in his image with the moral code written on your heart, man.
Okay, now they see that's an interesting thing because I seem to remember you saying that there weren't any atheists who just died denying God in their own righteousness or something along that lines. Do you still think that?
Well, that's not what I think. That's what the Bible says.
That isn't relevant. You know, do you think that?
Well, it doesn't matter what I think. I personally do think that, but that
Okay.
not because of my own arbitrary feelings about it. It's what the Bible says, and I think that the Bible is word for word the truth inspired by God.
Okay, so you think it's okay to enslave people then? I mean, I'm sorry to put words in your mouth here. This isn't a straw man. This is, if it's word for word accurate, then Exodus 21 says that you can enslave people. If you're not doing that, then you're not, following the rules.
Yeah, I don't know why we're held up on this slavery thing, man. I think I've explained it already. That was an Old Testament law. We are now under Christ's law. And Christ's
Okay.
law
Now,
says to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, love your neighbor, etc. So if anybody is enslaving other people and treating them inhumanely, that is definitely not according to Christianity. You understand that?
I would think it would be interesting for you to say that, since didn't Jesus say, obey the law? Slaves, obey your masters.
Yeah, but it also says to slave owners, treat your servants well, because you keep in mind that you too also have a master in heaven. So
Okay.
for
But
you
it
to
was,
take the slavery thing way out of context really doesn't do your position any service, because like I said, it wasn't the type of slavery that you saw in the American South where humans were treated like dogs. God gave these slave masters the command to treat your servants fairly. So it's really a moot point.
I don't think so, because why would it say in the Bible that if you beat your slave and they don't die within a couple of days, you won't be punished? That suggests people were doing that in the first place. You don't make rules unless to counter something unless it was happening in the first place.
Right, and the fact that there were rules and punishments for those kind of things tell you that it wasn't directly condoned, does it not? And again, you're giving me a moral objection here, but you still have not given me an objective basis by which you derive an objective moral standard by which to oppose anything you're saying in the Bible as being bad. So
I did give you
you're
that.
still borrowing from the morality of the Bible, which says thou shalt not, etc., etc., and then imposing that on me as if atheism can substantiate that burden of proof.
I already did explain to you how, that you can get an ought from an is. That you don't have to treat something because of that. You can actually create a different way of doing things. Like I said about disabled people, you can create allowances. Just because something is something doesn't mean to say it has to be that way. So I already defined that one. When it comes to stealing, I define the reason why I think it's wrong, and that's outside of the law. So,
But there are people who disagree with you, correct?
no,
So everybody agrees that we should treat old people fairly and that we shouldn't steal.
I think that we should do this because it doesn't help us as a society to have people doing that. And
Well,
hang on. As a society, we have said to our citizens, if you do that, we will punish you for it. We will send you to jail or sometimes worse.
that doesn't answer my question. I asked you, aren't there people who disagree with you that we should not treat old people fairly and that we should not steal? Aren't there people that disagree with that in this world?
I'm sure there probably are. But
Who says that you are right opposed to them? Just the consensus, majority opinion?
yes, the consensus.
That's a fallacy.
It's not a fallacy at all, because what we're doing is we vote. We have created social structures such as democracies, and so we make a vote to our parliamentary member or our senator or whatever, and they vote on our behalf. We can
So
have.
if Hitler would have taken over the world and he would have got the consensus, right? If Hitler would have gotten the consensus of the whole world that says that we should eliminate these so-called inferior races, then you're saying that would be good.
No, because if you notice, most of the rest
you're
of
just contradicting yourself then. If you said consensus is what makes a right or gives you an ought from an is, then you have to concede that point, that if Hitler would have taken over the world and said that we should eliminate the old people and the Jews and the blacks and the inferiors, then he has the consensus that says it's good, therefore it's good.
But have you noticed how we don't do that anymore? Because
that's irrelevant to my point, though.
But this is the whole point. This is how, I mean, it's a social evolution in effect. We've had disasters of humanity such as that, and said no, we're not going to do that anymore. And you know, if you remember, we had Kosovo, and they tried doing it again, and we slammed them down. You know, people have gone to jail for this. You know, we have changed as societies. You know, around the world, there's some societies that are still going to catch up, and other societies that are moving on. You know, so
sure, but that doesn't negate my point in the slightest.
Yeah, but
that doesn't negate the point. The fact that basically all you're saying is that morality boils down to consensus, majority opinion. So if the majority got the consensus that it's okay to treat elderly people unfairly, and the consensus is that we should all go around stealing and pillaging from one another, then that would be considered the moral good for that society, because they have consensus. So you have no objective. It's all subjective there. So
and I don't
sure, I agree with you that we shouldn't do those things, but according to your worldview, you have no objective reason why we shouldn't.
And you've got an objective reason why you should enslave people. Does that make you better than I?
See, again, you keep going back to slavery, and it shows that you know.
Because it's a contrast.
Well, like I said, it's not the same kind of slavery, and if you keep going back there as if it is, then it's really no point in talking about it, because I'm not going to agree with you. We're going to talk past each other. So slavery, again, I'm going to say it again, the slavery that you're trying to ascribe to the Old Testament is not the same kind of slavery that we're thinking of, where humans were treated inhumanely like dogs in the American South. So.
And do you think they were treated any different back then?
Treated any different as in what?
Like, I mean, ownership, cattle, you know. How would it be any different?
Yeah, I'm sure that some people did abuse their authority. Sure, that happens. But to say that it was condoned, like you're making it seem like God said, beat your slaves and teach them that they're 1/3 of a person, like they did in my ancestors in the American South. Well, that wasn't the case. God said, treat your servants fairly, because you also have a master which you serve in heaven. So it can't be more clear there. You're trying to take away the entire context of it and make your context seem like it's more valid when it's not a correct exegesis.
Okay, can you explain how any other context I could take, Exodus 21, where you can, you know, you basically, I mean, if you want, I'll quote it to you. It says, if a man goes in alone, he'll leave alone. If he goes in married, he'll leave married. But if you buy him a wife, then you know, at the end of the 6 years, he gets to go free, but they don't. And then you give him a choice, and if he says, "I love my master, I love my wife, I love my children, and I do not want to go free," you take him to the door, the doorpost, you stick a spike through his ear, an owl, and he becomes your property forever. Am I getting any of that wrong anywhere? And if that's the case, what am I getting wrong? And how should I be looking at that?
Well, you're giving me your opinion that it's wrong, correct?
Hang on, that wasn't the question I asked. Am my exegesis saying that okay? Was I getting that right?
Well, what's okay is what I'm trying to get out of you for the last half hour now. An objective ought. And you can't provide it. All you can provide is majority opinion, which I shouldn't be obligated to give a damn about, honestly. I mean, if atheism were true, if there is no God of the Bible, then I shouldn't give a flying F what your opinion is about morality.
Okay, so if I was to accept the Bible, I should be enslaving people, as Exodus 21 suggests. Am I exegesis in that you didn't answer the question?
Dude, if you were to accept the Bible, you'd be under Christ's law, which says that treat other people how you're supposed to be treated, how you would want them to treat you. Love your neighbor, love your enemies, etc., etc. So this is why I don't do Bible studies with people who profess that the Bible isn't true, because you're going to approach it in this kind of disingenuous manner. Now, if you were to approach the Bible the way a Christian would, as if it were true, then we can discuss these finer details and work out some of these discrepancies that you might have with it. But for you to hold this position that the Bible is immoral and that there's no reason to discuss it with you because you don't have any grounding for morality, dude, at all.
But I just explained my grounding for morality. I think the ownership of other people as property is wrong. I wouldn't want to be owned. Why would I want to own somebody else? I use exactly the same golden rule as you do.
Okay, that's fine. And I told you several times now that the Bible, under the Christ law, does not allow the inhumane treatment of human beings. So I don't see what your beef is. You should be a Christian if that's the case, because Christianity says we're not supposed to do those things. So why aren't you a Christian?
Because I read the Bible and I found it quite abhorrent. Yeah, logically, it makes no sense as well.
Okay, well, that's your opinion.
I think it's fairly objective as well.
You have no objectives in your worldview, bro. It's just consensus opinion, which can also change from time to time.
Well, Joy, would you like to invite? Would you like to talk to other people, get some other people in?
Sure, you can. But before we do that, I just wanted to clear up one thing that you brought up before, you and your pal Fiona. You keep saying this. You keep bringing up this straw man. You say that Alex Botten got me and Colin Pearson to admit that he could be our God, right?
I don't remember the Colin Pearson one, but yeah, I do remember your one, yeah.
Yeah, that's a straw man of the position. That's not at all what happened. If I ask Alex Botten to account for his knowledge about something, that is in no way implying that he does know something or that he doesn't know something. That's asking him to give an account for it. So when I asked Alex Botten to give me one thing that he knows that he can't be wrong about, and Alex Botten says, well, I know that I'm not your God, that in no way implies that he could be God. That is just asking him to give an account of how he knows that he's not God. Do you see the difference?
But if you said that he doesn't know that, he could be your God.
I'm not implying that he doesn't know it. I'm just asking him to give an account for his knowledge claim. He claimed that he wasn't, so we asked him to validate or account for that knowledge claim that he made. That in no way implies that he could be correct or that he could be incorrect. That's just saying, how do you know that?
But that's what the whole precept argument is based upon, isn't it? It's just sort of pointing the finger at the other party so they don't ask the unfortunate questions, like I did today.
It's to get people to give an accounting for the claims that they make based on their presuppositions. He presupposes that he can have knowledge without God. So we asked him, okay, you think you can have knowledge without God? Name one thing that you know. And he said, well, I know that I'm not God. And then we asked him, how do you know that? That doesn't say that, well, he could be God. It just says, okay, how did you come to that conclusion? What method did you use to reach that conclusion that you aren't God? That doesn't say that you are God. I just wanted to clear that up because you and Fiona have both brought that up to me, and I think it's a very silly straw man.
Well, it's an interesting point because, it was one of the things that comes into the precept, isn't it? Sort of effectively, it's like, how can you know anything to be true? How do you know that your senses are working? How do you know, that reality is real and things like that? But I could say exactly the same thing to you, and in order to be able to know these things, you have to do exactly the same thing I have to do. In order to cross the road, you've got to look and see whether there's any cars coming. And if there are cars coming, you've got to sort of estimate how long it's going to take from then to get from there to here. And are you going to be able to cross the road in that time? And if you do it previously, and you had plenty of time left, then you can say, well, if I shorten that time, then I shall achieve it, and until it doesn't work, or until it gets a bit closer than you'd like. So in exactly the same methodology, the same functions that you would use to know the world is real and things like that, and including whether your Bible is actually a book and whether it's got any information that you can use at all, you've got to use exactly the same faculties I do. The only difference is you've attached another label, another layer to the onion, and you call it God. And the fact that you have to...
Well, that's a gross misunderstanding, misrepresentation of the position.
But
I don't deny that we have to use the same cognitive faculties. The difference between us, well, what the presup argument does is forces you to give an accounting for it in a way that doesn't beg the question.
But the fact that you need to presuppose it in the first place suggests that you don't have any evidence to support it.
Well, now you're making knowledge claims as if this is something that you know. So if I asked you, how do you know that, and then we went through the whole script, I would expose the fact that your epistemology is grounded in a fallacious circle of begging the question, because you have the difference between a Christian and you in this discussion is that we can give an accounting for these things, whereas an atheist, you can't. You're stuck inside your own head. You're assuming that the things outside of you are real. You're assuming that you can come to truth. You're assuming that you can use your cognitive faculties and the rest of it. But you have to use them in order to prove them. We're stepping outside of the circle and saying we can use them because God exists. You're saying we can use them because we can use them. You see the difference?
No, because I see you doing exactly the same as I do, except for that you're just presupposing something. And that's it. It's a presupposition. You have to presuppose it.
Well, it's given an accounting for it. We're saying that we can know what's real because God has revealed what's real. You're saying we can know what's real because we can know what's real.
I didn't finish my sentence. What I was trying to say is that you can't just use the evidence that you've got and make a conclusion based upon that. You have to presuppose that conclusion in order to make everything else fit.
Okay, I presuppose that the Bible and everything that it says is true, and that God has revealed himself through nature, through our conscious, and innately. Okay, those are my presuppositions. An atheist has a different set of presuppositions which does not involve those. So when we ask you to give an accounting for your knowledge, which you have to use those things, your reasoning, your logic, your cognitive faculties, you have no other appeal than your brain. It's basically saying my brain works because my brain works. We're saying that our brain works because God created us. You see the difference?
No, because I see you doing exactly the same thing. Your brain works because your brain works. And the fact that you read the Bible is because...
No, I'm saying our brain works because God exists and he created it.
But it's exactly the same formula.
No, it's not, bro. It's not the same thing at all.
It's exactly that. You have this circular system that you use in order for you to be able to read your Bible, in order to be able to know that Bible has any meaning to you. You have to have those faculties in the first place. The only
question
is that I don't have to wrap a presupposition on anything.
Question: how do you know that your brain is working properly?
How do you know yours is? It's exactly the same way as yours does. In order for you to...
That's a fallacy, bro.
Sorry?
So that's a logical fallacy. I asked you to give me an answer, and you just asked me a question back and told me I'm doing the same thing that you're doing. You haven't explained it yet. How do you know that your brain is working properly?
I don't know. Generally because it was working in the previous times.
So you know that your brain is working properly because your brain is working properly.
No, because based upon what has happened before, I've used that to reference it.
But you had to use your brain to come to that conclusion, so you haven't left the circle, man. You had to use your brain to conclude that your brain was working before to conclude that your brain is working now. So,
didn't you do that?
In a sense, well, no. What you're doing is saying my brain works because my brain works.
Okay, how do you not do that?
Because I start with God and you don't start with God.
Why would you start with God?
Because if you don't start with God, you're reduced to saying my brain works because my brain works, and that's a logical fallacy by definition.
But aren't you doing the same thing by saying my book works because my book works?
No, I'm saying God exists,
Same
therefore
thing.
my brain works. You're saying my brain works because my brain works. If you don't see that, man, I mean, it's okay.
But it means exactly the same thing. There's no difference. There really is no difference.
Well, if you don't see the difference with starting with an all-knowing, all-powerful creator of your brain to validate it, as opposed to appealing to your brain to validate your brain, I don't see how we can move on from that point.
Why are you presupposing that God exists?
By the impossibility of the contrary.
No. How do you know that God exists?
Because he told us. Same way you do.
But how do you know that unless you're using your brain to know that?
Are you saying that God could not tell us that he exists?
I don't believe there's a God to tell you that it exists.
That wasn't the question. If God existed, couldn't he tell us that he existed?
Well, that would be difficult if God doesn't exist.
No. I'm asking you. If God exists, which I hold that he does, if he exists, could he not tell us that he was real? I mean, come on, dude.
Could he? Yes. But how would you know?
That's my position. God exists, and he's told us that we are real people, that we can come to truth, etc., etc.
Right,
so from my point of view, from my worldview, you've just granted that I can know what's real. I'm asking you now to explain to me how your brain can know what's real without using your brain to validate it. You can't do that.
Right. When you say God has revealed it, how has he revealed it? What is the function? What is the methodology? You know, is it a voice in your head?
Same way he's revealed it to you. He's revealed it through your conscience. He's revealed it in nature, and he wrote a book telling us how and why he did what he did.
That what didn't answer the question. What is the function that he tells you?
What was that?
What is the function in how he tells you? Is it a voice in your head? Is it the words in the book? What is it?
Like I said, some of it's innate. It's written on our conscience. We have natural revelation. When we look at the world, we can see the difference between natural causes and intelligent causation. And he also came down as a human being in Jesus Christ, walked the earth, performed miracles, talked to people, and told us, I am God, listen up, this is what you need to do. So he's given us more than enough revelation. That's why the Bible says that people are without excuse for denying him, because he's all around us. So if you reject that, if you reject that, Cliffjumper, that's your choice, man. But
here's the question:
for you to have an epistemic basis to oppose me, I would ask you to ground your reasoning and your cognitive faculties, your brain for short, to let me know that you can actually have a rational justification for an opposition to my claim. And you haven't yet. All you're saying is my brain works because my brain works. Now, if I told you the Bible's true because the Bible's true, you wouldn't accept that crap, would you?
Hang on, though. When you described all that a minute ago, that you looked at the world around you and things like that, you're using the same faculties I'm using, okay? And then you said
not entirely.
Hang on, and then you said Jesus came down and died for us, etc., etc., okay? How do you know that? I mean, I'm going to use the precept argument. How do you know that?
By revelation from God. He tells us that.
And how did you get that revelation? Which is the question I asked earlier.
I just explained it. Some of it is innate. We just know. Other parts of it are through our conscience. Other parts of it are through nature. Other part is in the Bible itself. So we have more than enough revelation to affirm the truth of what I'm telling you right now. So you can either accept it or reject it, but that is my epistemology. How do I know things? God lets me know. What is your epistemology? Does your brain tell you that your brain works?
But you still haven't gone beyond your circle, because
no, I have. You just don't understand it.
I haven't finished yet. So in order to be able to read your Bible to know that was true, and to look at the world to know that was true, you had to have the same faculties I have. You have to go through the same loopholes that I have to. So you haven't actually got anything more than I have. You've got exactly the same thing.
So now you're saying that God has not revealed himself, correct?
Yeah, but in order for him to reveal himself in a way that you understand, you have to be able to have the same faculties I have.
But I
So
have an accounting for
how
why
do
my
you,
faculties actually work and can comport with the actual world outside of my brain,
and
as
those
in
faculties
revelation
are the ones
from
I'm using.
God. And if you don't understand that, we're going to keep talking past each other. I have yet to get an answer from you how you can validate your brain without using your brain.
But this exactly what I just said to you just now. In order for you to validate your ideas, this idea that God exists, you have to use the same faculties I do to be able to receive the revelation in the first place. And how do you know that revelation is something real and not just something
Bro,
that's in your head, which is the kind of question that you asked me?
bro, I told you, God lets us know. Can you oppose that claim?
I just did.
No, you just gave an arbitrary assertion based on your brain, okay? So how do you know your brain is valid without God?
But you just gave exactly the same assertion to me.
Okay, buddy, this is going nowhere. Okay, I'll say this again. God has let us know. He's all powerful, he's all knowing, and he has transcended into our realm of existence, revealed himself to us, let us know the truth of his existence innately through nature, through our conscious, and through scripture. Okay? So that's four different ways of revelation to us that I'm saying that you have as well. Now, that is my claim. You can oppose that claim if you wish, but how do you escape the circle of using your brain to prove the validity of the cognitive faculties within your brain? If you have a way to do that without begging the question, I'm all ears, but I have yet to hear anything like that from you. So this is going nowhere unless you can do that.
But this is the problem. In order for you to be able to ask me that question, you have to have the same problem.
So now you're saying that God has not revealed himself.
How do you know he has? How do you know
No,
that
what you're saying is
the faculties
for
that
you
you
to say, well,
words?
hold on, for you to say, well, you're using the same thing that I'm using. No, I'm using God, bro. That is my appeal. Revelation from God is my axiomatic starting point.
But it's
Revelation
not.
from God. So you would either have to show that God cannot reveal truth in that way, that God does not exist, or that you have an alternative
Okay.
epistemology to mine, which is rational, which can ground knowledge and truth, to even oppose my claim. So you would
Have
have
you?
to prove that God doesn't exist, or that he can't reveal, or this conversation can't move on.
Okay. So have you ever seen that picture of, it's kind of like the Bible's true because it says in the Bible that it's true. You know the one I'm talking about?
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. It's basically as two art pictures. The top half says the Bible is true, and underneath it says because it says in the Bible that it's true. So it's a circular argument. Yeah. So think of it instead of saying Bible, use faculties. Okay? So the faculties are true because the faculties are true. But in order for you to use the Bible, you've got to use the same faculties in order to justify the other half of it.
Bro, you're missing the whole point here. Okay, so it's the last time I'm gonna say it, and then I'll probably get off the call if we got to keep going around in circles because this can go on for days.
Yeah.
God has revealed. God has came down and revealed. God is revealed through our conscious. He's revealed through nature, and he wrote a book telling us how he did it and why. Okay, we have transcendent revelation, something from outside of our mind coming in and revealing. And this person is all knowing and all powerful, so that's how I know things. All right, same way you do. I affirm that you know things from the same way. You trust that when you walk out into the street, when you look both ways, your brain is going to comport with the reality and you don't get hit by a car because you were created in the image of God with the proper mind and brain to assess reality around you. Okay, that is my epistemology. Okay, so for you to say that that's not valid, or for you to say that I'm doing the same thing that you're doing, which is using nothing but my brain, the chemicals in my brain for that matter, you would have to show that God either does not exist or has not revealed, and you have yet to do that. So until you can do that, my argument stands as valid, And yours, I still haven't even heard it yet, other than saying my brain works because my brain works because my brain works.
But and I can say the same thing. All you've made is an assertion that God exists, based upon your faculties of reading the Bible, which says that God exists.
So you're saying that God has not revealed innately, he has not revealed through nature, and he did not come down as a man in Jesus Christ and reveal his nature. So that's what you're claiming.
I think it's far more simple than that. I think that that there was a guy called Jesus. He pissed people off, and they crucified him for not following the proper rules, because of course it was the Jewish people who.
Okay, sure. I'm talking about Revelation, though, man. Cliffjumper. I'm talking about Revelation. Are you saying that God either does not exist or has not revealed in a way that we can know things to be true?
I don't think God exists.
Okay, so we have two different presuppositions. My presupposition is that God exists and has revealed. Your presupposition is that God does not exist and that all we can use is our brain, right?
No, I don't have a presupposition that God doesn't exist.
You just said you don't believe that God exists.
No, because I came to that supposition because of a lack of evidence to support it.
Did you use your brain to come to that position, Cliffjumper?
Sorry?
Did you use your brain to come to that conclusion that God does not exist?
What would I use?
That's not my question.
Well, obviously I was saying yes, because I wouldn't use anything else to come up with that decision.
Right, and you know your brain works how?
Because we can study it and test it, and we can see it working.
And you had to use your brain. You had to use your brain in that process, correct?
What? I use my brain to see my brain's working? No.
Sure you do. You said you'd test it and see that it works, right?
No. Yes, I can use my own thoughts, yes. But, an outside force can look, you can see a CAT scan or something like that, and you can, MRI imaging, and you can see the parts of the brain lighting up.
Right, but in order to interpret that data, you're going to have to use your brain, right?
No, because someone else is using their brain.
Wow, so you don't have to use your brain to look at an MRI scanner and a CAT scan and interpret the data, really? You don't have to do that, really?
Bear in mind, I'm not the person who's interpreting it because I don't know how it works.
But for them to tell you, yes, Cliffjumper, your brain is working fine today, you would have to use your brain in order to interpret what they're telling you about that test, right?
Yeah.
Right. So when I ask you, how do you know your brain works, you're going to have to use your brain.
In a roundabout sense. But again, you can see
in a direct sense. In a direct sense, you can't get outside your brain, man. You cannot get behind consciousness, your own consciousness. So if I asked you again, how do you know your brain's working properly to bring you to the conclusion that you don't think that there's a God, you're going to have to use your brain in whatever process that is. You have no way to escape it. But somebody with a messed up brain, a schizophrenic, could say the same thing. My brain works properly because my brain works properly, and you have no way to know that you're not schizo. So that's the difference between our epistemologies here, bro. You have one that is stuck in your brain, a straight circle. My brain works because my brain works because my brain works. I'm saying that God has revealed that my brain works. It's outside of my brain. So you can oppose that claim, but when you oppose my claim that God has revealed, you're doing it from a foundation grounded in a logical fallacy of using your brain to prove your brain about your opposition. So you have no way to even oppose me. We're at a stalemate. This is why the transcendental argument is irrefutable, and this is this is a clear example of it, man. So I would say for you to either study up on this, and maybe we could talk about it another time and go more into detail. But I just wanted to clear up a few of those things that you and Fiona and a couple other people we're talking about. No, we did not agree that Alex Botten could be our God. The presup argument is about examining respective worldviews, and the presuppositions within it is not just about asking people gotcha questions or tripping people up. It's a logical argument for the transcendental existence of God.
But it's not the Van Til argument, is it?
It's a Christian argument.
Well, who do you think Van Til was?
It's a Christian philosopher.
Yeah, but it's not the Van Til argument. It is a weaken, shutting up atheist kind of argument. It doesn't actually
Well,
go.
whatever kind of box you want to put the argument in, it's obvious you can't refute it, and also it's a Christian argument. So when people say it's a Psi 10 version or a Van Til or a Clarkian version, whatever you want to call it, it's a Christian version. I presuppose the truth of Scripture,
Well,
which
see, I
says
think
that without Scripture you can't know anything, and that all things are derivative from God. So that's my starting point. That's why I presuppose. Why should I give that up to someone who doesn't even know that his brain works without using his
it's an
brain?
interesting
I mean,
question.
that's it's
When you say
stupid.
God, which God? Because really, so far, all you've said is a God exists, but you can't really say it's your God or anybody else's God or a God at all. You know,
Did
you
your
can
brain tell you that?
pose it.
Did your brain tell you that?
Did my brain? No, you told me that.
Well, did your brain interpret what I told you, or what you think I told you?
Yes, but of course, in order for you to
Exactly.
tell
So
me, you have
so
to.
that's how this conversation goes nowhere. I presuppose Christianity, bruh. I'm not presupposing Hinduism or Buddhism or Taoism or uh, some kind of polytheism. I'm arguing from a Christian standpoint. Now, I've been arguing that the whole time. So you can say it's not the Christian God that I'm arguing for, but I'm saying that's the only one that exists.
But if you're going to make me justify my stance on reality, you must doubt yours because if yours is true, mine must also be true.
Well, my reality says that God exists and has revealed himself.
And how do you know that he does?
I've already answered that, man.
But no, you haven't, because all you've done is say, I used my brain to read the Bible, and that told me that it was true.
Well, people can play this back and see if that's actually what I said. That's not what I said. But if that's the way you want to go with this conversation and completely ignore everything that I said and put words in my mouth, I mean, I'll just get off the call.
Well, am I mistaken in what I just said? Do you not use your Bible to as the foundation? You've got the presuppositional God exists, and your Bible to verify it. So are you not using the same faculties I am, using your brain to read the Bible to
Well,
justify
I'm
the?
saying that God verifies that it's apart from the Bible. The Bible just gives an objective justification as far as how he did it and why. But I say that my brain works because God exists and created it. Okay? You don't have any revelatory source to confirm that you can come to truth. See, I say that you can come to truth because you know that God exists and he's giving you the same revelation, but you deny that. So, this is what it is, man. You can either submit to Christ and submit to his love and take what he's given you for free. I mean, he didn't have to die for you, but he did. I mean, you can take that on faith, but it's not just blind faith. It's reassured faith. It's a full understanding of what he did for you. Or you can, continue with an atheistic philosophy and say that you evolved from whatever kind of lower primate and that you're nothing but, a higher sentient being than a dog, and that when you die, there's nothing else. I mean, the choice is yours. But epistemologically, logically, rationally, you can't argue against me. It's just not possible.
I did because I just pointed out that for you to have any revelation, it must be something that's going on in your head, in your brain, and to
I don't
verify.
hold that presupposition.
And your objective thing to verify it is the Bible. But how do you know if that is actually?
How many times did I say it's not just the Bible?
Yes, I said revelation.
Right.
And in order for you to receive a revelation, then you're using the same faculties. You're using your brain to accept this revelation, and you're using the Bible to objectively justify that revelation. So you're
Because
using
God
the same
exists. That's the
faculties.
point. My brain works because God exists.
But
You have no appeal to a revelatory source outside of your brain. I've said this, I don't know how many times. I feel like it's an echo or deja vu. Because, yeah, I've said this so many times already. It's like you either don't want to acknowledge it and critically try to understand it, or you're incapable. But either way, I mean, this is going around and around in circles. You're telling me one thing, I said something completely different, and
But you didn't.
we should just leave it at that, man. I mean, I think you should accept Jesus Christ because it's the only rational position, and it's true. Jesus Christ is
Why
a
shouldn't I accept?
living God. He died for you, dude.
Okay, why shouldn't I accept one of the Shinto gods?
Because they don't exist.
How do you know that?
Same way you do.
Which is what?
Revelation from God.
No, I'm not receiving any revelation of God to believe that Shinto gods are real either.
Well, you'll that's something you're gonna have to deal with when the time comes. Now, won't it?
You know, exactly the same reason why you'll deny that is because you're using your brain to justify it. I can't see any
Well,
difference.
you can keep saying that, but over and over again, I've told you how that's not my position. So you can either accept my position for what it is and argue against it, or continue to straw man it. I mean, either way. But
I have argued against it.
well, that's fine. If you think you have, maybe we can continue this at another time. Maybe you guys can talk about it in the post-hang. I'm sure there'll be honest critiques of what I said here amongst you and friends at that post-hang, but I'll look forward to listening to it. But
Okay.
I urge people to go back and listen to this again and listen to what I actually said and then contrast that to any straw men that might be brought up in the post-hang. But
I mean,
I
it's
don't see
worth
us going
pointing
any
out.
farther.
I'm not versed in philosophy. It's not my deal. You want to talk about railway modelling or painting and things like that. I'm your guy. But
Hey, we could talk about that next time, man. I'm into that stuff too.
Yeah, to be honest, I find it very interesting. I had an interesting chat with G-Man and Pillbox, and if we weren't talking about the religion stuff, we got on great. Just because we don't agree on this point of view, doesn't mean to say we won't agree on others.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not a complete robot for Christ. I am a person. I do have interests and likes and things like that. I do get along great with people outside of this thing. I understand that it can be frustrating because it's an emotional topic and it's an unknown. It's very mysterious. Even
It's also difficult.
as much as I claim to know and be sure about things, there's still so much, man, that's such a mystery to me. Which is why I enjoy talking to you guys, because you guys do give me a lot of insight, and I hope vice versa. But yeah, man, we could talk about fashion all day long. We could talk about ping pong for all I care. I'm a regular guy. It's just people seem to hate me a lot because I'm a presuppositional.
Yeah,
but it's all good. They hated Jesus first, so.
I think the difficulty is we generally only ever see one side of each other. And it's the adversarial side of each other. So, I mean, ironically, I have walked the streets where G-Man lives.
Yeah, and I guess you've walked the streets where Jason Burns open air preaches too.
Yeah. But to be honest, my problems with him have not been because of his religion. I don't have a problem with you because of your faith. I don't agree with them, but I don't hold any ill will towards you. I just don't agree with you on this matter.
Yeah, I don't know what personally you have with Jason Burns. I just hope that you wouldn't do that just because he's a Christian. I mean, some people do though. They hate Christians. They hate the entire idea and they want it wiped off the face of the earth. So hopefully, us as representatives of Christianity can come across a little more loving sometimes. I understand sometimes these debates get kind of heated, but that's our goal, man, is to see you guys see the same joy that we get out of it, man. That's it. I mean, I'm sure you see flaws in my position and you say, man, if only these people could understand how stupid their position is, they'd be much better on our side. We get it. It's just finding a common ground somewhere sometimes can be insurmountable, it seems.
Well, I want to clarify just with you right now. The reason why I had the problem with Jason Burns wasn't because he was a Christian. I didn't have a go at him because of that. I had a go at him because he told lies about somebody, and rather than say, damn, yeah, I made a mistake, he doubled down and told more lies, and and when there came the chance for them to talk it out, he ran away. And it annoyed me.
Well, yeah, that's none of my business. I was just making a wisecrack at you. You know, whatever you guys have personally has nothing to do with me. But you know, things happen. People have disagreements, and
Mm.
you know, what have you. But I'm
Yeah.
gonna run, man. Maybe we can continue this later on in the week or something. Maybe go into more detail and
Yeah.
hash out some more things. But it was good talking to you, man. Peace out, and enjoy the rest of your night.
Okay. Enjoy your day.
Peace, man.
Invite some other people now. Okay, just invited some other people. And I shall be posting the link under in the comments in a moment. I think it's kind of worth pointing out that he did kind of run rings around me. I don't know philosophy very well, so it is very difficult to argue against something like that, and I think I'm quite honest with that. You know, I'm not the kind of person that really makes a claim unless I'm sure about it. Not knowing is perfectly fine for me. At least I can learn. Hey Jim, how you doing?
Hey.
I see you now. Your new computer working nicely?
Oh yes.
Was
So
that
yeah.
Was that a strut of a yes?
Sorry.
Was that a strutting yes?
My new computer is so incredible. It's ridiculous.
Oh dear me, that was quite a challenge.
Yeah, I really wanted to come in earlier than. Well, I wanted to come in 2 hours ago, dude. So.
Gee, it's been 2 hours. I didn't realise it had been 2 hours.
Yeah.
I thought it was only an hour. Crikey.
No. So yeah. That's. I mean, I stuck around because I thought you were going to add me in early on, and then you didn't add anyone in at all.
Yeah, I was trying to. I mean, I thought I did say, you know, we should invite some people and have a chat, you know, but I think he decided to leave.
Yeah.
I did find it very weird though, because, like I say, to my mind, he has the same circle to run around the night that I do.
Well, well, anyway, I had some questions for him, not for you. I mean, I know you get it, but it's too late now, really.
Sorry about that. What could you explain to me? Because obviously I've not quite gotten things quite right. So,
well, can you describe something that's never been described?
that would be difficult. Yeah. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Sorry, I need to make some bandwidth available for a second. Let me just quit some other applications.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how good your computer gets, you're still stuck with the pipe that's bringing the information in.
Still stuck with Virgin 100 meg bullshit, yeah, and I've got a BitTorrent file coming in.
Exit.
Right, that's better. Yeah, so the point he was trying to make, I'm trying to backtrack now through like 2 hours worth of conversation. The thing with the Lawrence Krauss thing is that he wasn't talking about not a thing. He was talking about things that cannot be measured, or things that have no or very low mass. So that's where the nothing in the something from nothing thing comes from with Lawrence Krauss. right?
Yeah.
But he's not actually talking about things with no mass. He's talking about things with very low mass.
Mm.
The description of things that have never been described before goes to Arcane's thing of having to use your senses in order to justify your senses, right? This thing of like using your reasoning and your logic to justify your reasoning and logic. Like, first of all, what does he mean by justify? Why should you have to justify anything to him when he's the one who believes in things that can't be proven to be true?
Yeah.
And secondly, I thought it was very telling that he didn't want to talk about slavery in the Bible. He did want to talk about other things that are in the Old Testament.
Mm.
So you could have had him very, very quickly, for example, by asking him if he believes in adhering to the Ten Commandments.
Mm.
Now, clearly he does, because he, in his own words, he believes that the Bible was written by God.
Yeah, literally word for word.
So if we're going to do away with the Old Testament, because it's not the word of this character Jesus, then presumably we can do away with the Ten Commandments too. Now, he was never going to give that away, and I'm having a hypothetical conversation with you here instead of having a conversation with him, because there were just so many things thrown out there. I was listening to the entire thing, and I wanted to come in every 5 minutes. So I can't recreate the atmosphere with you now because
He did say he was interested in talking to me in a week, so maybe we can do a sort of I don't know. We'll play. Was it double pairs or whatever it is?
No, well, I mean, I've got like 5 nights free, and then I'm back to being super busy. So
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to come in tonight. But there you go. Okay.
Let's hope some other people turn up.
Well, I've got to go to bed now because it's 4:30.
Yeah. Sorry for.
All right. See ya.
Take it easy.
It was interesting to watch.
Yeah, it's a bit. Like I say, I'm not very good on pre-sup and things like that. You know, it's
Well, the way I
philosophy
look,
thing.
yeah, the way I look at pre-sub is it's designed to stop the conversation. It's not designed to actually go anywhere.
Yeah.
Because you're absolutely right. They go through the exact same circle that everybody else goes through. They assume they exist and everything else before they get to God, and then they go, oh well, God.
Yeah.
And it's like, but you left out steps, bro.
Yeah, like I say, I'm not very versed in it, so as a result, I was a bit sloppy, and I only really set this up a couple of hours before, so you know.
Well, no, I completely understand. Like, I ran into Arcane yesterday, and I can't talk to the guy. I really can't. Like, some of the concepts that he throws out are just too mind-numbingly. I can't wrap my head around it. So it's just like, okay, I'm gonna go.
Yeah, I think the difficulty is that many of the fundy types, they kind of make these kind of assertions, and then when you point out they're not right about them, they start to kind of circle the wagons, and you know, I don't know, they kind of almost double down sometimes.
Well, he wanted to talk about, what was it, like molecular chemistry or molecular biology, and he's like, well, it's a science of information, and I'm like, no, it's all chemistry, it's all chemicals. There's no information there except for what we assign to it.
Yeah.
It's how we interpret the chemicals. They're still just chemicals.
Yeah.
Well, no, there's information there. No, there's not. Information is a construct that we make up.
Yeah. It's a post thing, isn't it, rather than a pre thing?
Yeah, and that's what he's told me. I have presuppositions, and I'm like, I really don't, because I just look at the evidence, and then my assertions come from where the evidence points, as opposed to going, well, I'm going to think this, and let me try and line up the evidence for it.
Mm.
But he doesn't get that concept either. So, And I'm actually very new to this. I've been kind of studying up over the last 6 months, and I've only been in a couple of hangouts, but I just can't understand how people seem to think that information is something that actually exists, and they'll talk about the singularity like it's a real thing too, and it's like, no, that's where the math breaks down. That's not a real thing.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, I'm a layman. I don't really know a lot of these things, you know. I mean,
I don't even have a basic college education. I'm very much a layman, but I get these things. I mean, they've been explained enough to me to where I get them, I have a grasp of them, basically.
yeah. I mean, he asked me a question sort of along the lines of, do you believe these things? And it's like, well, you know, I don't know. When it comes down to things like the sciences and so on, you know, I expect they're true because there's a consensus in the science industry, you know, in the science fraternity. And who am I to say they're wrong unless I actually know what I'm talking about?
Well, and belief isn't something you really choose to do either. It's, okay, well, this is how this was explained to me. That makes sense, at least for now, and so I believe it. If somebody can explain it a different way, then I cease to believe that. I believe something else. Your belief gets modified.
Hi, Wendy. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi. I have a question. I don't know if, I mean, not really for you guys, but maybe one of you have asked it before and heard an answer. Can a presuppositionalist change their mind?
It depends on whether it's been revealed to them in the way they know it to be true.
Yeah, it depends on what they're changing their mind about.
Because it seems to me like if I'm presupposing God doesn't exist, but I'm willing to change my mind, doesn't that mean I'm not presupposing it?
It's an interesting thought.
If I'm open to evidence, then I haven't presupposed it, right? Like it's what you were saying, but I'm just saying I would change my mind under certain circumstances.
Yeah, there's no real presupposition there.
I mean, that was exactly what I said. I said, you know, I don't presuppose things. I go where the evidence takes me.
Yeah, I heard that. It makes sense to me. I just don't.
But if they're using a presuppositional argument, they can't understand that. I would have. You should look up the transcendental argument for the non-existence of God, or there's also an atheist presup, and maybe try that. And if my video card hadn't locked up again, I would link that in the side chat for you, because I've got the transcendental argument for the non-existence of God bookmarked.
I'm, like I say, I'm not very good on transcendental either.
Well, that's what presup basically is. It's basically transcendental. It's just the really, really, really lightweight version for the layman.
Yeah. The difficulty I have with presup is just the presupposing of anything. You know, if the evidence isn't there, what would you know? I mean, obviously philosophy is needed to make it work. Well, if you have to use philosophy to make something work, then it can't have much of a foundation in the first place.
Yeah. Like I said, it's really just there to stop the conversation, because you get to the point where it's an impasse. They make all the same assumptions that everybody who doesn't have their presupposition makes, so they just add God to it, and then it's like, okay, well, that's it.
And not just that a God, but their God.
Yeah.
And that's a leap in itself.
Well, yeah, and then if you try and bring something else up at that point, it's, well, how do you know that? How do you know that? How do you know that? Over and over and over again, until you just go, okay, I'm going to go away.
Ironically, I kind of did that before, wasn't it? You know, why not go for the Shinto gods? And it says because it's not the real god, they're false gods. How do you know that?
Yeah. The Hindu gods like Krishna are probably better to bring up, because we can prove for a fact that religion is older than Christianity.
Hi, Hogtie, how are you doing?
A little tired, kind of a long day. I think I missed a lot of fun hangouts today. How did JD's show go today? I see you were on the panel there. Lots of fun?
For a while, yeah. I didn't have a lot to say. I was kind of thinking about this, to be honest. Did you watch it?
No, actually, I just got into where I'm staying for the night, and I'm actually doing this through the computer but tethered to my phone, so I won't stick around for too long. I'm burning up my gigabytes. But yeah, I had a lot to say on JD's show about these guys with their G10 and true empiricism with their hangouts, where it's like, I just opened this hangout now. I didn't invite anybody. I'm not telling anybody I'm having the hangout, but you better come in right now with proof that I didn't do well on the Magic Sandwich show. Oh, nobody's here. I win. Bye. Click.
Yeah.
Hey, tough guy. Call everybody a coward. And anyway, Precept, who had just come into your hangout and made such a good point about the presuppers? If you can't change your mind without your whole worldview collapsing, then that's a presupposition. But if you're open to having your mind changed, if you're open to discussing it and open to new ideas, then it's not a presupposition.
Yeah, that's Shah.
Yeah, a brilliant point. I, for many months now, have been fascinated by how there are so many self-described presuppositionalists on YouTube who don't know the meaning of the word presupposition. It just stuns me. Like Arcane definitely doesn't know what the word presupposition means. Veckel doesn't. Veckel, generally pretty smart guy, pretty well read, but
I don't think Sai knows what the word presupposition means, honestly.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not using headphones. I hope I'm not introducing an echo. I just totally forgot.
You're good.
No, it's all right.
Yeah, I don't know if Sai does. I think any of them that take the position. I mean, here's the acid test. Is if any of them take the position that atheists presuppose there is no God. That right there is the acid test. They don't know what the word presupposition means, or at the very least, they don't know how it is distinguished in philosophy, and I would say even in common parlance. Presupposition versus assumption versus presumption or working assumption, things like that.
Yeah, I did say myself that I don't presuppose there is no God. I go where the evidence takes me.
Well, if I did presuppose there was no God, I'd have to ask, when did that happen? Did it happen before or after my 25 plus years of Christianity? Because I changed my mind. So I couldn't have presupposed there was no God while I still believed in one, could I? Like, I don't even understand when that would happen.
Well, you would have come to the conclusion through evidence that there wasn't one because you didn't see the evidence, so you're still not presupposing it.
Exactly. Like, it does. To say that I would presuppose there is no God is absurd because I changed my mind.
Yeah.
There was no changing my mind. That I don't know. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I don't think I did terribly well. I mean, I didn't do badly, but I didn't do terribly well. I mean, it was a friendly conversation rather than a proper debate or anything.
I don't know that there are any formulaic ways to. I don't know. I thought you did fine, but
yeah,
I don't know if there's a right way to argue against presuppositionalism, because it doesn't even seem valid enough to have a counter argument. I don't even know.
Like I said, there's an atheist presup argument. I don't know where to find it, but I have been told about it. It looked interesting. And there's the transcendental argument for the non-existence of God. So, I mean, there are definitely counters.
Sure, I guess.
But I don't want to spend like 6 hours studying something and trying to figure out how to actually do it just to counter something that's kind of just at its core is just so base and dumb.
Well, I do, as often as possible, try to make the point, and even in discussing it with them, that there is no such thing as a presuppositional argument. And that is for, like, setting aside the classical ones, but I mean the modern cyclone spin-offs. None of them are engaged in a presuppositional argument. I wonder if I should blow the dust off that post I made a few months ago where I invited them to lay out the argument for us. What are the starting assumptions? What are the premises of the argument? What are the conclusions? Let's not even get in a twist over whether or not the conclusions follow from the premises. Just tell us what the argument is. and it's tumbleweeds. You don't hear a response. I even went as far then to actually say, okay, let me, after having heard this thing presented from a number of different people on many different occasions, let me try to tell you what I think the presuppositional argument is. Again, nothing. They just, because it's not an argument, and I tell them that every time. It's not the presuppositional argument. It's a presuppositional position. They're saying, my position is the Bible's true, and the Bible is an inerrant word of the Creator God. You go, okay, well, that's fine. Good for you. I like apple pie.
Yeah. Well, didn't Cliffjumper say that tonight to Arcane? Wasn't it? Well, where are you going with this? What's the conclusion? And Arcane had no answer. Or was that something I was watching earlier today? I can't remember. But I thought I heard it here tonight.
So, where is that going? You seem to be, it just seemed to be making exactly the same assertion to me as it was to me.
Yeah, and they'll never have an answer for that, ever.
No. I mean, I think the question that bugged him out most in that discussion was the bit about Exodus 21, where you can enslave your own fellow Hebrews for life if you marry them off. And I said, am I exegesing that correct? And he just wanted to divert off that.
Well, to listen to his definition of what a slave is, like every minimum wage fast food worker in the country is a slave because they essentially work to pay off their debt constantly.
I have heard almost that exact argument. Or if you get into debt with somebody, if you buy a car, and you got it on hire purchase, whatever you want to call it, then you're in debt and you've got to pay it off, to the bank or whoever.
I have a question that probably maybe none of you have an answer to, but in the Old Testament times, because I kind of know what would have happened maybe in like USA history, like with slaves, but in the Old Testament, if a slave had just said, I don't want to do this anymore and just decided to leave, what would happen? Is there scripture that, like what happens to slaves in the Old Testament if they decide not to be a slave anymore?
I'm guessing that's the reason why the rules about beating them as long as they don't die too quick.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I just wondered if anyone knew.
Well, I mean, considering we're talking about people who lived in the desert, if you ran off and you were a slave, and you'd probably die in the desert.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's just my guess, but I mean, we're talking about people who lived in the Bronze Age in the desert, so.
Yeah, but what would you know? Because you're a tiger with with purple hair.
Not a whole lot, obviously.
I'm sorry, I did you there.
That's all good. I mean, furries ruin everything, apparently, even atheist hangouts.
I do know that in Deuteronomy they say that you're not to return slaves. Like if you give refuge to a slave, you're not to return them to their masters, which is conventional in I think that's fairly well known. Like in the slave days of the U.S. and whatnot, if you caught a slave, it's property, right? You give that slave back to his or her owner.
Okay.
But that was not permitted. Now again, I don't know if that distinguishes like so many of the other slave laws, whether it was a Hebrew slave enslaved to another Hebrew or whatever else. But
because to me that I'm just saying that to me is a big difference between being a slave to McDonald's. I have to work there to pay my bills. It's a little bit different because I don't have to work there. I just can choose not to pay my bills. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you do have an obligation, but your obligation is based upon wanting to have a roof over your head and food in your belly.
Yeah.
Well, in more civilized countries, is to have a good credit record.
Regular on the gas? Yeah. 2290.
I think Heikki's got some noise in the background. So you were saying, Nadia?
I said in more civilized countries, it's to have a good credit record, but well, U.S. of course, a pink slip is a death sentence if you have any major medical condition, and yeah, you'll get put out in the street.
Isn't it amusing how in America having a good credit rating is good, except for when you're the government?
True enough.
My country has the same problem, by the way.
Although,
government cannot fail. The government cannot fail to pay its bills. I mean,
yeah.
It brings the money into existence at the stroke of a pen. Trick is, are there Republican obstructionists defeating the attempts to do so?
True. Although, Cliff, tonight when Arcane got on the golden rule of you should do unto others as they do unto you, Nadia brought up a good point about the platinum rule the other night, and yeah, it kind of supersedes the golden rule. So I think that probably would have been the way to go.
Yeah, but personally, I think the golden rule, and I think I didn't really say it specifically, but I did sort of mention it, is that a conducive, society doesn't work without the golden rule, as in, you can't trust your neighbours whether they're going to kill or steal or whatever. That a society doesn't work that way. So I think that the golden rule precedes the Bible, precedes societies,
Well, it predates it.
Yeah, that would be based basically on empathy and come back down to that, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that did kind of frustrate me was that Arcane sort of suggested that I didn't have a rationale, in an is-or distinction kind of thing. And it's like, well, yes, I did. I said just because something is the case doesn't mean to say that you have to go with that, and which is what I used with the disabled thing.
Yeah.
Just because someone is disabled doesn't mean you have to treat them. Doesn't mean to say that you can't make extra effort. Doesn't mean to say that they've just got to crawl around because that's the way that they were made, so to speak. That's the way that they are. We've changed society to make it more equitable for them.
Well, yeah, and again, that comes back to being social constructs and empathy. When you see somebody who's hurting, if you've been in that situation or you can picture yourself in that situation, you generally empathize with them. And that's the basis for morality. Like, I don't want somebody to enslave me, so I'm not going to go around and enslave other people.
Oh, yeah. We also are in far less trouble with the is-ought distinction. I mean, we have the entire theory of evolution based on creatures going around getting almost none of which die except by being torn apart by predators, as he is, and when it comes to what ought to be, we become vegetarians and otherwise are at least more civilized to each other amongst ourselves. They have trouble accounting for that because they, of course, have every aspect of nature being the product of some omnibenevolent divine will that,
it's an interesting.
Had to have wished it upon or considered it most just to inflict that kind of ending upon basically everything that's ever existed, or the vast majority of everything. So
it's an interesting point, though, because if science created an artificial meat that tasted and smelled and in all the ways you think it's meat, I'd eat it. I would be vegetarian immediately.
That's good because they're just years away.
Yeah.
Yeah, the artificial meat is there, just improving the taste.
So
I hear it tastes a bit like despair.
I'm gonna close this window and refresh and everything, and I'll be back in just a sec.
Okay. So what does failure taste like?
I'll probably hop over to one-way apologetics after this, but yeah.
Yes, I got to step out too. I'll probably listen a little bit, but like I said, I got to watch my bandwidth here. So have a good night, all.
Okay.
Bye.
So,
Have a good night, Hawk Day.
I currently have 10 viewers. If you're interested in getting involved, there is a link under the Hangout, so you're quite welcome to join. So, did you watch?
So much.
Sorry, what was that, Natty?
I was going to ask for a recap because I was embroiled in other hangouts while yours was actually going on and such.
All right. Well, it was 2 hours. I actually only intended to be an hour, and then I get some people in, and unfortunately that kind of slipped by. Amazing how quick it went. So we talked about all sorts of things, really. We talked about, why I don't believe. Talked about something from nothing, and a bit of astronomy in there. Then we kind of moved on onto the science stuff with, and then the pre-sup, and we went around in circles for at least an hour. But the important thing about it is that although we didn't agree, we didn't shout over each other or call each other names or anything like that. Although I did think the pond scum was a little bit naughty. Other than that, I think we got on perfectly fine. And it's exactly the point I made at the end, is that just because we don't eye to eye on this topic doesn't mean say we can't talk about other stuff. How you doing, beautiful?
What's up? I just got out of the hangout with Nephilim Free. My head hurts.
I'm so sorry.
Oh.
It took me like 5 minutes before I realized who I was talking to. And then I was like, are you that stupid or are you trying to piss me off?
Mm.
Recklin was like, you realize that that's Nephilim Free. Or he was like, he was asking, you didn't realize that you were talking to Nephilim Free? I'm like, no, it just dawned on me that's who I was talking to. No wonder why you're a fucking moron. Oh my god. Just stupid of all stupid. He kept trying to shoehorn his idea that all historians agree that Jesus existed. And I'm like, no, they do not all agree. Not factual whatsoever. There are, across the board, there's a, at this point, you might even say 50-50. There might be more, actually. I would even grant you that there's probably more that agree that he probably existed. But I got to tell you, saying that all of them do, sorry, that's not the case. Try to shoehorn that Josephus is extra-biblical information about Jesus, and sorry, you lost that one as well. His other names.
Ken Jones recently nailed me on Tacitus or whatever, and the whole Christians thing for the extra biblical evidence where I wasn't prepared to actually go through the motions of that one, but yeah. Go ahead.
I've watched a bunch of Richard Carrier stuff recently on the historicity of Jesus, and he's recently changed his mind on that and basically said that he used to think Jesus was a real person, but given the research he's been doing over the last bunch of years, he's changed his mind. And he thinks it's a mythical story that got basically transformed into a real person. And I don't know, I don't know that I believe one thing or the other, but his point of view is pretty convincing.
I've probably not done as extensive research as Mr. Carrier might have, but I've certainly school. Dick Carrier would, he might have done some extensive research. However, I've studied this in school. I'm familiar with Josephus and all the rest of the freaking names out there. Sorry, but most of them are fake. Most of them are fake. And even the passages, the one time or the two times actually when he even mentions Jesus, that particular line is known to be a fraud. It's a forgery. It's known to be a forgery. And so that's why, when he kept trying to shoehorn it in, I'm like, no, sorry. I might grant you all the other names I might be unfamiliar with because, I have to research on that one. But as far as Josephus go, you lost. You can't use him. You lost. You lost.
I think there's another thing about Josephus as well, and that is that he really, really hated Herod's reputation. Hated the guy. So do
Yeah.
you think that he wouldn't jump at the opportunity to talk about how this guy Herod demanded that all children under the age of 2 be killed?
Yeah.
Josephus has to corroborate that, actually. I mean, it might be helpful for the Gospels or whatever if Josephus provided extra biblical evidence of it, but the assertion or the one-liner or whatever, 2 one-liners don't mention it. I think one of the 2 mentions Pilate, and that's about it.
Yeah.
But doesn't it mention? If I'm right, I mean I might be wrong because I haven't looked this up for a while. But wasn't it based upon this is what these people believe rather than this is what happened?
I'm foggy.
What I mean is kind of like saying, these Christians, this is what they believe. He's not verifying that the events happened, just that there are people who believe these events happened.
Sounds about right.
I'm trying to remember what Josephus's assertions were actually about, but if it had been the, I guess, mass slaughter of children or whatever, I think I would remember. I'm pretty sure I would have remembered it, so I don't think it's that, but I can't see what they actually are. Okay. I mean, somebody Google.
Oh, excuse me.
I'll Google. Okay. Josephus, oh Jesus.
Hey guys, I'm actually I get up out of here. I thought I had more time.
Well, what I don't know if you realise what happened tonight. I had a chat with Arcane.
With Arcane, yeah, I've seen that you invited me to it. I was at work, so.
It was okay.
Okay, was he boring as usual?
A little bit. I mean, we went around circles on the pre-sub stuff, but I still maintain that he expects me to go through to justify my reasoning, faculties, etc., etc. He has to do the same thing in order to be able to read the Bible or receive a revelation. And even then, that reading, the understanding, and the revelation could also be just in his head, exactly as he suggested it could be in mine.
Yeah, he got an inch somewhere.
Yeah. So.
All right.
Talks about James, brother of Jesus. Talks about John the Baptist. Talks about the crucifixion under Pilate, but not the slaughter of the children or whatever. Okay.
Well, I can see Pillbox has enjoyed talking about the hangout, so maybe he wants to join in. It'll be up to him. However, I don't want him doing his loud monotonal shouting.
I still think I got a good line in the other day when Carlton had a picture of a turtle, and I said I can't see pictures of reptiles without thinking of pillbox anymore.
Yeah. The last time Pillbox and I, we haven't spoken for a long time, but we had a nice chat about things, but we weren't talking about the religion things, so that's why. We talked about aeroplanes.
The airplanes are good.
An aviation fan as well as herpetologist.
Yeah. He likes, well, I mean, of course, the name MG42 is the machine gun.
Yeah,
So,
German machine gun.
Yeah. Yeah, I think most of mine have got cannons, so. But yeah, I do model airplanes and model railways and things like that, war games. So.
I'm a bigger fan of rotary wing.
What, sorry?
I'm a bigger fan of rotary wing aviation.
Helicopters.
Right. Yeah.
I said minigames. Do you play like Flames of War or Bolt Action or?
No, Warhammer 40,000.
Oh, 40K. Okay, 40K is a good game.
If you're interested, I can show you a rotary wing vehicle.
Absolutely.
Wow.
A little bit of dust off it, but there you go. That's US Navy Coast Guard, 80s version, 90s version.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent, yeah. I like some of the exotic variants. The Fenestrons are nice things right there.
It's actually fairly unusual because it's a French aircraft and America tends to buy American.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, we bought Harriers for the Marine Corps from you guys.
I'd say.
Yeah, and tends to. Actually, the first aircraft. Americans were using Spitfires during the war. They had Beaufighters as well. In fact, I've got a Spitfire, American Spitfire up there.
Yeah, on that front, definitely, especially.
Yeah, well, if you have a look, just up there, a couple of American.
I like the exotic rotary wing affairs, like the tandem rotors and tilt rotors and things. Fenestrons are kind of a little miniature dimension of being slightly exotic, but well, not very exotic, but still.
My favourite aircraft of all World War II aircraft-wise is the Beaufighter.
I like the P-38 Lightning, honestly. It's a creepy little plane. Not when I say little, that's being figuratively, of course, because they were huge. Yeah,
they're actually quite large. There is an interesting myth about the Mustang, which you might think, well, where's the relevance between the P-38 and the Mustang? Well, the P-38 flew on, oh gosh, I forgot what the name of it is now, Allison engines. And the first Mustangs flew on Allison engines. But the original idea of the Mustang was they were actually originally designed for the British for high altitude fighter, long range fighter.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the engines just wouldn't operate at very high altitudes. They would start to conk out and struggle to get oxygen, basically. So they ended up changing to use the Merlin engine that they used in Spitfires, and they came into their own at high altitude. But at low altitude or medium altitude, the Allison engines were perfectly fine. And a myth grew out of, that because the Merlin was better and the best engine that they used, and of course the Packard was just a rebuild of a Merlin. Because that was the better engine, the other ones were rubbish. Well, that's not true. Just because something isn't as good, it doesn't mean the other thing is absolute rubbish.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, that's why we still used Mustangs up until even in Vietnam as low-altitude support fighters.
Yeah, but of course they were using the Mustang, the Rolls-Royce Merlin on those ones.
Oh, true.
But no, the Allison engines went right the way through the war. On a Mustang, they were used them as fighter bombers and things like that. Like I say, medium to low altitudes. It was only as bomber escorts that they weren't suitable for the job.
Yeah.
In fact, I've got a very nice one just over here. There you go.
Oh, yeah.
We've got some nice weathering underneath. Don't worry about the paperclip. That's what I use to hang them on the wall.
Yeah. Very nicely done.
Well, otherwise you need like loads of loads of cabinets and things like that, and they take up loads of space.
Yeah.
I just use these. Anyway, I don't think anybody wants to watch me in my stupid things, so I'm going to go off there with this. We can talk about that stuff on there.
Yeah,
So,
I probably.
if you're still watching, thanks for watching. And if you want to join, there's the link down underneath. You can still join. So, enjoy your night.